Chapter 56-26. Qin Dongqing laughed and cooperated. What Lin Yi, what Green Cloud sect, they're just trash. How can they compare to our current Xiaoyao? If you like it, Master Shui, you can do whatever you want. Old Chen's words are not very pleasant to hear, little Lin, don't mind it. Shui Jianfeng smiled and said to Lin Yi, Old Chen did not say that you are trash, he said that you are all trash, don't hear wrong. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, 2 pieces of trash, did they just crawl out from the garbage dump? What a stinky smell. Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing were already at the early stage of the profound ascension realm, and they did not hold back at all. They thought that they could suppress Lin Yi, but they did not expect that Lin Yi was completely fine, and even mocked them in return. These were people who had suffered a great loss in the hands of Lin Yi, and thinking of Lin Yi's unpredictability, they could not figure out Lin Yi's actual situation, and their arrogance suddenly dropped a lot. In fact, Lin Yi also had a headache at the moment, not because Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing were at the early stage of the profound ascension realm, but because Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing were at the early stage of the profound ascension realm, Lin Yi did not put them in his eyes. The key was that Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing had become profound ascension realm. It meant that the sea beast Blue Jiao had been used for experiments, and he did not know if it was dead or not. If it was dead, then the sea beasts in the endless sea would riot again. As for whether Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing really used the Blue Jiao to reach the early stage of the profound ascension realm, Lin Yi did not doubt it at all, because both of them had the aura of sea beasts, although it was not strong, but Lin Yi's feeling would not be wrong. Cheetah did not see that Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing had some inexplicable fear in their hearts. He only saw the powerful aura of Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing. It was not inferior to the primordial invincible, and even better. And from the flying saucer in the sky, there were still people continuously jumping down, although there were no profound ascension realm masters, but they were all nascent soul realm masters, a total of about 400 to 500. Who knew how the metal disc that did not look very big could hold so many people? Among them, there were at least 100 people who were as strong as Cheetah. 100 nascent soul realm masters. Such amazing strength was enough to sweep all the sects present. Ha 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 ha, our Heaven Awakening faction also has an important decision to announce. However, we are not going to rely on other sections. Instead, we are going to merge with the center and form a new center Heaven Awakening faction. Qi Dane laughed loudly as he announced. Seeing the profound ascending stage experts appearing one after another, he couldn't wait to become a profound ascending stage expert. Originally, he didn't dare to believe it, but the appearance of Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing made him know that he had a high chance of successfully entering the profound ascending stage. As long as you join the center, you can become a profound ascending stage cultivator. Qi Dai could not resist such a temptation, and very few people could. Lin Yi glanced at the excited Qi Dai and instantly understood a lot of things. Putting aside the delay just now, when he helped Qingquan Sect's Tribulation Transcendence Immortal to delay time, he was actually helping himself to delay time. Apart from that, Lin Yi also suspected that Qi Dai was also involved in the capture of the Oceanic Beast royalty. Otherwise, Qi Dai wouldn't be so surprised by Shui Jianfeng's and Qin Dongqing's strength. Qi Dai, have you colluded with the center and helped them capture the royal sea beasts in the endless sea? Lin Yi suddenly asked. Qi Dai was slightly startled and then smiled sinisterly. I didn't join the center long ago, I just contacted Master Shui recently. I have to thank you for all this. If it wasn't for the rise of the Jadian sect, I wouldn't have needed to prepare for a rainy day. If it wasn't for your threat, maybe I wouldn't have been able to get this opportunity to enter the profound ascension stage. Recently? You mean before the hunting of the oceanic beasts in the endless sea? Lin Yi glanced at Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing, snorted and said, the center captured the oceanic beast royalty at such a coincidental time. Don't say that you were not the one behind it. The 2 nascent soul stage masters from Qingquan Sect and 5 Elements Sect were probably instigated by you to go, right? Qi Dai was secretly surprised. He didn't know how Lin Yi saw through all this, but as Lin Yi said, these things were all pushed by him behind the scenes. But these things had no connection at all on the surface, and there wouldn't be any clues left. How did Lin Yi know? The messy threads in Lin Yi's mind had gradually been straightened out. Originally, he really wouldn't connect all this, but the moment he saw Qi Dai and Shui Jianfeng working together, he slowly pushed it back and actually figured out a lot of things that he didn't think of before. Seeing that Qi Dai didn't speak, Lin Yi continued, you secretly informed the center about the time we 10 little ones killed the oceanic beasts. With us diverting the attention of the oceanic beasts, the center can capture the oceanic beast royalty without attracting too much attention. At the same time, they can also put the blame of the oceanic beast royalty on our heads, diverting the trouble to us. Tribulation Master Jinren and Ma Zedong, the two allies who had already turned against each other, couldn't help but look at each other. The truth was, as Lin said, they sent two nascent soul stage masters, and it was indeed instigated by Chi Danyi. Moreover, Chi Danyi clearly said that they couldn't touch Lin, so they had to deal with the likes of Thousand Blades faction and Snow Sword faction. At the same time they could cut off Lin Yi's wings and at the same time vent their anger. Now that they thought about it, perhaps it wasn't that simple. Lin Yi smiled coldly, glanced at the audience and continued, "Let me guess, you instigated the Qingquan sect and the Five Elements sect. In fact, you also had the intention of weakening them, right? This is a good plan that kills three birds with one stone. No matter how things develop, you can not only help the center's action, but also weaken the strength of the Qingquan sect and the Five Elements sect, and at the same time attack all the 10 small sects and families. The capture of the Oceanic Beast royalty will definitely cause the Oceanic Beasts to riot. This is your plan. If there is no accident, except for the people of the center, everyone else will be buried in the endless sea." The audience was in an uproar. Lin Yi's words sounded a little unbelievable, but they were completely reasonable. If it weren't for the unexpected factor of Lin Yi, the result would be exactly the same as what Lin Yi said, that everyone who entered the endless sea would be buried in the Oceanic Beasts riot. If things really developed in this way, it would be even easier for the Enlightened Heavens faction to occupy the ancient small Jianghu. As long as the center killed Immortal Du Nan of the Qingquan sect, there would basically be no obstacles. Chapter 56-27. He didn't even need the center to do anything, because one of the conditions for Chi Dane to join the center and help them catch the Blue Dragon was that Xue Jianfeng promised to help him become a profound ascending stage master. It was a pity that Lin Yi messed up their entire plan, and the appearance of Yu Yi in Primordial Invincible was out of Qi University's expectations. Qi University had no choice but to announce the merger of Qi University's faction with the center, forming a nondescript Central Qi Tian faction. Nonsense. Chi Dane's face was gloomy. Although Lin Yi said almost all the truth, Chi Dane wouldn't admit it easily. After all, he still wanted to lead all the sects in the immemorial small Jianghu. Moreover, there were sea beasts in the endless sea involved. No one knew if the sea beasts would hear these things or not. Primordial Invincible, weren't you always in a hurry to challenge the center's Heaven Awakening faction? Why are you mute? After Chi Dane scolded Lin Yi, he simply changed the topic and challenged the Primordial Invincible. The Primordial Invincible looked at Chi Dane coldly and said, "This old man is waiting for your last words. Are you ready to die? We'll know who's coming to die soon." Chi Dane sneered and turned to Xue Jianfeng and said, "Elder Xue, I'll have to trouble you with this reckless thing." "No problem. This young master wants to stretch my arms and legs. This old guy is a good sandbag." Xue Jianfeng returned to his previous arrogant style. As long as the opponent wasn't Lin Yi, he felt that he wouldn't lose. Without waiting for the great elder to announce the start of the battle, Xue Jianfeng flew towards the Primordial Invincible. He didn't even take out his long sword and directly punched. In terms of battle experience, Primordial Invincible, who was once the #1 nascent soul cultivator, was naturally much stronger than Xue Jianfeng. Normally, when facing an opponent who was slightly stronger than oneself, one should avoid the brunt of the attack and attack when the opponent was unprepared. However, this time, Primordial Invincible did not have such a plan. Instead, he took a step forward and punched out. This was the pride of the Primordial Invincible. How could the former #1 Yuanying stage cultivator, who was now a master of the mysterious ascending stage, retreat and dodge in a confrontation with a junior? In the loud bang, the huge airwaves spread in all directions. Chen Dongqing and Chi Danyi had already retreated from the ring, and the aftermath of the fight between the two even made the protective inhibition formation on the edge of the ring to make a cracking sound, as if it was about to break. The audience below the stage all exclaimed and retreated. This was a battle between two profound ascending stage masters. Once they were affected, they would not even have the chance to resist. If the battle between Tribulation Immortal and Xianijia was said to be a battle of skills, then the battle between Xue Jianfeng and Primordial Invincible Warrior was a simple battle of strength without any fancy tricks. After a short stalemate, the clothes on Primordial Invincible Warrior's arms seemed to have fallen into a violent whirlpool, and under the rapid rotation, it instantly shattered into powder, until it stopped completely above his shoulder. After a low muffled groan, he took 3 steps back, each step leaving a deep footprint on the hard rock. Xue Jianfeng, on the other hand, slightly shook his body after taking a step back, then he rushed forward again. In the first round, it was obvious that the Primordial Invincible Warrior was at a disadvantage. Lin Yi's face was solemn. The primordial invincible warrior was the strongest among the 3 mysterious ascending stage cultivators that he had promoted. After all, he was the one with the deepest accumulation and the strongest foundation. But even so, he was still no match for Shui Jianfeng. His ability was indeed unfathomable. Invincible, Shui Jianfeng has integrated the gene of the sea beast. His body is extremely strong, don't fight him head-on. Lin Yi reminded him using Zhen Qi, but in this ever-changing battle, he didn't know if he could help the primordial invincible warrior. After the primordial invincible warrior stabilized his footsteps, Shui Jianfeng had already rushed over again. Lin Yi's voice transmission also came at the same time, so the primordial invincible warrior no longer insisted on fighting head-on. Instead, he raised his hands and hundreds of cold lights flew out from all over his body. It was the Thousand Blade sect's ultimate skill, 1,000 blades flying together. This time, the primordial invincible warrior chose 1,000 blades that were as thin as a cicada's wing. Under the blessing of the 1,000 blades flying together, the speed could reach an amazing level, and with its own sharpness, it could be said to be an invincible weapon. Shui Jianfeng laughed, facing the gorgeous 1,000 blades flying together. He was not afraid at all. The 2 of them exchanged a punch, and then the primordial invincible warrior took the initiative to use his weapon, which proved that Shui Jianfeng was stronger than the primordial invincible warrior. Snow Dance Silver Snake. The temperature of the entire arena plummeted, and in an instant, it was like a drop of water turning into ice. Countless snowflakes appeared out of nowhere, covering every inch of the space, covering Shui Jianfeng's figure. Primordial invincible warrior was shocked. These snowflakes were formed from Shui Jianfeng's true qi, and to be able to burst out with such a shocking amount of true qi in an instant, he had to admit that Shui Jianfeng was stronger than him, be it in terms of physical strength or the strength of true qi. The blades of the 1,000 blades flight fell into a difficult situation in the snowflakes. The blades, which were supposed to move with lightning-like speed, were quickly wrapped up by the layers of snowflakes. They all turned into clumsy and slow snowballs, unable to fly anymore. Break! Primordial invincible warrior roared, gathering all the true qi in his body and controlling all the blades to collide with each other, shattering the layer of snowflakes and temporarily restoring the blade's mobility. But this situation could not continue. As long as there was no new method, the blades would immediately return to their original state. Amidst the snowflakes, Shui Jianfeng's indistinct and arrogant laughter could be heard. "Ha, old man, is this all you've got? What a disappointment. You treated those scrap metals like treasures, and here I thought they were very powerful. Let me show you this young master's sword first." Yu Yi, who was below the arena, could not help but curse in his heart. "Shui Jianfeng, you big idiot, do you still need to see your cheap tricks? Your forehead is already full of them, okay?" In the past, when Yu Yi was still Yu Taitsong, it was Shui Jianfeng who dragged him to the center, and later, Yu Taitsong's body was also taken away by Shui Jianfeng. Originally, he thought that with the help of Lin Yi he had successfully advanced to the profound ascension stage, but he did not expect Shui Jianfeng to be even more powerful. Of course Yu Yi was unhappy. Chapter 56-28. Amidst the flying snow, a long sword that seemed to be made of ice and snow fell from the sky without a sound. It was like an ordinary snowflake falling, but this snowflake was dangerous enough to take a person's life. Primordial Invincible couldn't find Shui Jianfeng, who was hiding in the snow, and his divine sense couldn't detect any attacks. He could only control the blades that were temporarily separated from the snow to fly around his body, forcing the snow away to create a small space. When the sword above his head entered the empty space, it immediately shed the snow disguise, revealing a piercing killing intent. Primordial Invincible suddenly raised his head, and all the blades gathered together, forming a simple and unadorned greatsword that pierced the sky. The tips of the two swords clashed together without any suspense. Shui Jianfeng's slender and long sword bent slightly, then bounced up. Shui Jianfeng's figure appeared in the snowflakes in the air, and he floated down to the ground. As for the huge sword formed from 1,000 blades, it was rapidly covered in frost from the tip of the sword, and cracks also appeared on the blade. Primordial Invincible's expression was solemn, but he didn't care about the cracks on the greatsword. With a wave of his finger, the greatsword in the sky scattered into the original 1,000 blades. It was originally scattered, so naturally there was no need to worry about the cracks. As the greatsword disintegrated, the frost covering it lost its effect. The blades turned in the air lightly, and the sparkling ice was flung away. Shui Jianfeng chuckled and said, "A little interesting. It's time for this young master to warm up." After saying that, Shui Jianfeng's body swayed, and once again disappeared in the sky full of snow. Primordial Invincible snorted, ignoring Shui Jianfeng, and instead closed his eyes. Since the eyes could lie to him, then he might as well not use them. The 1,000 thin blades let out a clear clanking sound and exploded like a school of startled fish, flying in all directions. This time the falling snowflakes couldn't trap the blades immediately, leaving clear scratches in the space where the snowflakes danced in the air. Found it. Primordial Invincible suddenly opened his eyes, and after a low shout, he put his hands together and true chi surged. 1,000 blades in 10,000 streams returned to origin. The flying blades seemed to have teleported, completely defying the principle of their own inertia. They suddenly disappeared from their original trajectory, and gathered at the position that Primordial Invincible had pointed out, turning back into the ancient greatsword. This huge sword carried the force of a thunderbolt as it ruthlessly chopped down, splitting Shui Jianfeng and the snowflakes into two. Sorry, you found the wrong one. Shui Jianfeng's voice suddenly sounded in Primordial Invincible's ears, and the two halves of Shui Jianfeng's have scattered into a pile of snowflakes. Primordial Invincible's heart skipped a beat. As soon as Shui Jianfeng's voice rang out, he moved to the left. Primordial Invincible's rich battle experience saved his life. The moment Primordial Invincible moved, Shui Jianfeng's long sword stabbed into his back like a venomous snake. If Primordial Invincible hadn't moved, the sword would have pierced through his heart. Even if Lin Yi had attacked him personally, he wouldn't have been able to survive. It was that crucial movement that allowed Shui Jianfeng's long sword to stab into Primordial Invincible's right back, and out of his chest. Primordial Invincible's own strength pulled the sword out of his body, cutting through the bones on the right side. Fortunately, Primordial Invincible's arm was raised, or it would have been cut off by the sword. Primordial Invincible, who was severely injured, slammed his left palm on the ground, and used the force to change his direction, shooting out like an arrow, causing Shui Jianfeng's follow-up attack to miss. Oh, you're not bad at running away. Shui Jianfeng looked at Primordial Invincible mockingly, as if he was a cat toying with a mouse. He shook his long sword, shaking off the blood on it. I admit defeat. Primordial Invincible's face was pale, and the wound on his chest was bleeding profusely. If he didn't admit defeat, he would bleed to death without Shui Jianfeng's help. After experiencing ups and downs, Primordial Invincible was no longer the arrogant and inflexible person he once was. If he knew that he couldn't do it, then he would never do it. He was the only one who could take on the responsibility of reviving the Thousand Blades sect. Ling Tianyu had potential, but he was still too weak. Primordial Invincible knew that he couldn't die. Such a straightforward surrender made Shui Jianfeng's approaching footsteps stop, but he immediately laughed and said, "Oh, my ears aren't feeling well, I can't hear anything. Let's kill you quickly to heal yourself." Shui Jianfeng's long sword pointed straight at Primordial Invincible's throat. In the blink of an eye, this early-stage mysterious ascendant expert would fall under Shui Jianfeng's sword. He said he admitted defeat. Just as Shui Jianfeng was about to stab Primordial Invincible, Lin Yi's voice suddenly appeared in Shui Jianfeng's ear, just like what Shui Jianfeng did to Primordial Invincible before. Shui Jianfeng, who didn't feel anything, was immediately scared out of his wits. His fear of Lin Yi had already penetrated deep into Shui Jianfeng's bones. Even if Shui Jianfeng was getting stronger and stronger, and thought that his strength was far beyond Lin Yi's, he couldn't erase this subconscious fear. "Ah!" Shui Jianfeng screamed. He couldn't care less about killing Primordial Invincible anymore. He directly turned around and waved his sword, wanting to attack Lin Yi first. Lin Yi sneered. Such a response was simply the worst in the current situation. Lin Yi could already speak in his ear, how could he be hit by Shui Jianfeng's attack? In terms of combat experience, Primordial Invincible was really more than 8 streets ahead of Shui Jianfeng. Unfortunately, his strength was suppressed, and he couldn't see through Shui Jianfeng's moves. That's why Primordial Invincible lost to Shui Jianfeng. There was no special move, nor did it require any fancy technique. Lin Yi just threw a simple slap. Shui Jianfeng just happened to turn around as if he was rushing to use his face to attack Lin Yi's slap. Then Shui Jianfeng spun and flew out, landing heavily on the other side of the arena. Lin Yi looked indifferently and waved his hand. "Your face hit my hand and it hurts. You're really a master of the profound ascension stage." Shui Jianfeng heard this sentence in a daze and directly spat out a mouthful of blood. "You're the one who likes to hit people's hands with your face." But at this moment Shui Jianfeng really didn't dare to say anything. He was originally very afraid of Lin Yi, and now he was even more frightened. This young master was already at the profound ascension stage. How could he be slapped away? This world was really too fake. Chapter 56-29. Linny, don't mess around. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences. Qin Dongqing, who was protected by a dozen or so Yuaning stage cultivators, was secretly relieved and immediately shouted at Lin Yi. Lin Yi ignored him and squatted beside Invincible Primeval. He held Invincible Primeval's wrist and took out a 5th grade recover pill and put it into Invincible Primeval's mouth. He said to Invincible Primeval through True Qi, "Don't worry, cooperate with the healing." If it was just a 5th grade recover pill, it would not be able to quickly stop the bleeding of Invincible Primeval's wound, but Lin Yi's True Qi could do it. In fact, it did not matter if he did not use the 5th grade recover pill, Lin Yi was just using it to deceive people. Qin Dongqing saw that Lin Yi ignored him and seemed to feel a little embarrassed. He continued to say loudly, "Lin Yi, don't think that you are great just because you are powerful. Let me tell you, if you piss me off, I will give an order and these Yuaning stage cultivators will immediately trample the small Jianghu in ancient times." Invincible Primeval's injury was quickly controlled, and the remaining 5th grade recover pill could quickly heal it, so Lin Yi retracted his palm and stood up to look at Qin Dongqing. He said with a face full of sarcasm, "So? Give an order." Qin Dongqing choked for a moment. If he really wanted to give such an order, he would be a little afraid. After all, this was a last resort. It was just like the nuclear weapons of the secular world. It was okay to say that I don't like you and I want to throw a nuclear warhead in your face. No one would really use it. If they really used it, it would be a big problem. Lin Yi, don't be too arrogant. Do you think we can't deal with you? I'm not afraid to tell you, we have a secret weapon. Qin Dongqing coughed twice and suddenly his eyes lit up. He seemed to have thought of something and shouted. Then he pressed something on his wrist, and a set of alloy armor suddenly appeared on his body. It was like the armor in sci-fi movies and it looked very cool. Lin Yi was surprised, but he was not surprised by the alloy armor. He had seen this thing in the Mirage in the Endless Sea. Moreover, Kang Mingming had shown it to Lin Yi on the Heavenly Island, so it was not strange. The key was, how did Qin Dongqing make this armor? This was something that Lin Yi was very interested in. Shui Jianfeng, who was rescued by a few perfected nascent soul realm cultivators, also had his eyes lit up. He burst into laughter and said, "That's right, we have a secret weapon. No matter how powerful you Lin Yi are, it's useless. See how this young master deals with you." After saying that, Shui Jianfeng also pressed a few times on his wrist, and the same alloy armor appeared out of thin air, enveloping Shui Jianfeng completely. "Ha! Lin Yi, weren't you supposed to be super strong? Come on. Let this young master see how powerful you are." Shui Jianfeng regained his arrogant laughter. With the defense and attack power of this alloy armor, Shui Jianfeng thought that Lin Yi would definitely not be able to break or resist it. "If you don't come, then this young master will let you see what is called real power." Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and a bolt of lightning struck down. Shui Jianfeng immediately stopped talking and green smoke came out of his head. He fell straight down with his back facing the sky, making a loud bang. So powerful. What an eye-opener." Lin Yi said expressionlessly and turned to look at Qin Dongqing. Qin Dongqing's whole body trembled, and he quickly put away the alloy armor. His eyes were full of reverence for Lin Yi. He could not understand how such a powerful equipment could be destroyed by Lin Yi so easily. Speaking of which, what was that lightning thing? If Lin Yi wasn't here, the appearance of this armor would be an undefeatable existence in the ancient small world. Even if a Foundation establishment stage person wore it, they would be able to fight against the undefeatable class of the ancient times, not to mention Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing, who were in the Mystic Ascension stage. However, on the Heavenly Stage Island, after Han Jingjing's guidance, Lin Yi knew the weakness of this armor. It was made of alloy and it was an electronic product. These two characteristics determined the fact that it could be easily destroyed by a bolt of lightning. Qin Dongqing sighed in his heart, and at the same time, he did not forget to put on a strong front and shouted at Lin Yi. "Lin Yi, don't you dare move. If you dare to move, I will let them kill all the sects in the ancient small underworld. Don't think that I don't dare, I mean it this time." Lin Yi looked at the hundreds of powerful nascent soul stage cultivators and could not help but frown. He thought that even if the center had this kind of technology, there would not be so many materials and people. He did not expect that he had completely underestimated the center. For Lin Yi, these nascent soul stage cultivators were nothing. They would not pose any threat to Lin Yi at all, but the people from other sects were not the same. If Lin Yi wanted to kill all the enemies at once, then he could only use a large area of effect martial arts such as the Super Dan Fire Bomb or the Thousand Thunder Explosion. The problem was that these moves were not easy to control. At that time it was really hard to say which side would die more. Seeing Lin Yi frown, Qin Dongqing secretly rejoiced in his heart. He did not dare to force Lin Yi too much. He quickly took a step back and said, "Lin Yi, how about this? Today let's not interfere with each other. The undefeatable immemorial stage has been defeated. How about we end the challenge of the four great sects? Let's settle the grudges between us in the future, shall we?" Lin Yi was in a difficult position. He did not want to let these people from the center go, but he was also a little hesitant to take action. For a moment he was in a dilemma. At this moment the ground shook slightly and it became more and more obvious. Soon in the distance outside the ruined town, countless birds rose up. It was obvious that they were alarmed by something. Sea beasts? Lin Yi swept his divine sense over, and an expression of surprise appeared on his face. The agreed time of 3 days was not up yet, and this was not the coast of the primordial mountains. He did not expect that at this critical moment, the sea beasts would actually appear here. In the blink of an eye, a large group of giant turtles, crabs, seals, sea lions, conches, the conches were in the mouth of the sea serpent. They rushed into the ruined town. A sea crab carrying a coiled sea serpent came to the edge of the high platform and stopped directly not far from Lin Yi. The sea serpent ignored the big conch and nodded at Lin Yi. "Human, how's your investigation going? Our king can't wait any longer, so he asked me to bring my men here in advance. If you say that you haven't found anything, then don't blame me for flattening this place first." Lin Yi did not care about the threat in the sea serpent's words at all. This was all timely. The key to breaking the deadlock. Chapter 56:30. Qin Dongqing was dumbfounded. What was going on? The sea beasts had come to the land? Was he going to play with the world changing? The clown sea serpent didn't notice it before. After being reminded by Lin Yi, it was stunned for a moment before turning its head to sense Qin Dongqing's aura. It was just as Lin Yi said. This human had the aura of the blue flood dragon. Although it was very faint, it was definitely the aura of the royal sea beast. There was no mistaking it. Temporarily suppressing the rage in its heart, the clown sea serpent turned around and thanked Lin Yi. "Thank you for your help. You really didn't lie to me. You really helped us. From today onwards you are a friend of the sea beast. My friend, can you tell me where our royal young man is?" The clown sea serpent remembered that the most important thing was to find the blue flood dragon, so it didn't immediately order an attack. Lin Yi smiled and said, "He's not here. Let's get rid of these guys who used the flesh and blood of your people to increase their strength first. Then I'll bring you to find him." "All right." The clown sea serpent agreed readily. It originally wanted to kill Qin Dongqing and the others. Now that Lin Yi had spoken, it was even more of a favor. It would be weird if it didn't agree. After the clown sea serpent let out a high-pitched scream, the army of sea beasts instantly moved. Basically, 2 or 3 of them found a nascent soul stage cultivator in the center and released their respective attacks to their heart's content. The various sects in the immemorial underworld had long been confused by the continuous changes. Logically speaking, when the sea beasts were fighting against the humans, they should be helping the humans. However, those humans were originally trying to kill them while the sea beasts were trying to save them. This was truly messy. In any case, no one could intervene in a battle of this level. They might as well hide far away to avoid being implicated by the innocent people. The battle started and ended quickly. Under the circumstances that the sea beasts were at the same level, they were stronger than humans. In addition, they had an absolute advantage in numbers. They almost swept the nascent soul stage cultivators in the center with ease. Qin Dongqing was scared out of his wits. Who exactly was Lin Yi? He could even control the sea beast. How was he supposed to play? Seeing that the situation was not good, Qin Dongqing hurriedly carried Shui Jianfeng and jumped into the air amidst the chaos. He was sucked into the flying saucer and escaped. The clown sea serpent sneered. It had a deep impression of this AI Fuo. Of course it would not watch it escape. While the flying saucer was lowering its altitude to support Qin Dongqing, dozens of sea beasts who were already prepared sprayed a type of acidic liquid into the air at the same time. The liquid hit the flying saucer's cabin and corroded a large hole at a speed visible to the naked eye. The flying saucer in the center was shot down. The flying saucer in the center was dragging a long black smoke, with sparks sparkling around the hole. It quickly fell towards the endless sea. It was unknown whether Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing would die like this. The clown sea serpent turned around and instructed, "Go and inform those kids on standby in the sea. If they see the falling metal disc, don't let those guys go. Linny wanted to say that those two guys were masters of the profound ascension stage. If it was just some nascent soul stage and gold core stage sea beasts, they probably wouldn't be able to stop them. Unless the two of them were seriously injured when the flying saucer was damaged, then it would be a different story. However, the sea beasts who received the order did not look back. Linny did not say anything in the end. If they wanted to deal with Dongqing, only Linny would have a chance. Even Yui did not have much confidence. However, Linny did not have time to care about those two guys. If they could escape, they would meet again when they went back to Keiluo Mountain. There was no need to be in a hurry. Chi Daniai's face was as white as ash. It was a good plan and victory was in their grasp, but this shit-stirrer Linny messed it up. 400 to 500 Yuanying masters, how powerful were they? However, they were directly crushed by the sea beasts brought by Linny. No matter how clever Chi Daniai was, he would never have thought that this would happen. Linny glanced at Chi Daniai, then looked at Primordial Invincible. Just now Lin Yi's chi had almost healed Primordial Invincible. Now he was almost fully recovered. Just now in the first round the Thousand Blade sect lost. However, these 4 challenges are best of 3, so the second round can also start. The Thousand Blade sect challenged the Heaven Awakening sect. The Thousand Blade sect sent out Primordial Invincible, who is from the Heaven Awakening sect. Linny looked at Chi Daniai and asked with a smile. Chi Daniai's eyes darkened. How could they still fight? The 2 profound ascension stage masters in the center were defeated by you. Now you're asking me who is going to fight Primordial Invincible? Who would be stupid enough to go and die? Linny turned his head to Primordial Invincible and said, Invincible, your injuries are not healed yet. Don't hold back during the battle. The best way is to end the battle quickly, understand? Understood, I won't hold back. Primordial Invincible nodded solemnly and agreed. After that, he glared at Chi Daniai with murderous eyes. Chi Daniai's heart was extremely sullen. Is it really okay for you to directly say that you want to kill someone? Can't you be more reserved? Primordial Invincible twisted his neck and shoulders and waved his hand. The thin blades that were scattered on the ground returned to his side. He looked at Chi Daniai and said, Are you going to fight in the second round? If you are, then hurry up. Do I still need to ask a question? Can I ask a question? Chi Daniai asked with a sad face. The problem was that it was useless to ask questions now. No matter how much time was wasted, no one would come to save him. Yes. Primordial Invincible nodded and said, Okay, I'm done. Let's start the battle. Chi Daniai was stunned for a moment before he realized what was going on. Can I ask questions? This was also a question. Seeing Primordial Invincible's 1,000 blades in the air, Chi Daniai's eyes rolled back and he fainted. Linny coughed twice and asked the Great Elder of Ruins Town, who was standing dumbfounded on the side, Shouldn't you say something in this situation? The Great Elder of Ruins Town was already confused by the series of changes before. Now that Linny asked him, he subconsciously agreed. He shook his head for a while and finally recovered. Chapter 56:31. Seeing that Chi Daniai didn't seem to have any intention of waking up, the Great Elder of the Ruins Town continued, The third round of the Thousand Blades faction's 4 major challenges begins now. Both parties come on stage. The people of the Awakening Heaven faction looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Chi Daniai was the backbone of the Awakening Heaven faction. If he fainted, whoever went up would die. The problem now was not who would go up to fight Primordial Invincible, but whether or not they should get Chi Daniai off the stage first. Otherwise, fainting on stage was not a solution. However, the Great Elder of the Ruins Town obviously didn't plan to give the Awakening Heaven faction this chance. After the last sentence, he only paused for a moment before continuing, Both parties have chosen their candidates. The third round of the 4 major challenges begins now. The people of the Awakening Heaven faction were dumbfounded. What was going on? Why was he already on stage? He hadn't even left the stage yet. However, before the people of the Awakening Heavens faction could protest, the Great Elder of Ruins Town glanced at Chi Daniai again, then announced expressionlessly, Because the candidate of the Awakening Heavens faction has fainted on the arena, the Thousand Blades faction has won. The Thousand Blades faction versus the Awakening Heaven faction of the Awakening Heaven faction of the 4 major challenges. The Thousand Blades faction won 2 out of 3 rounds and became one of the new 4 major factions. Congratulations everyone. This time, even Primordial Invincible was a little dumbfounded. He had just regained control of his weapon and said something to provoke Chi Daniai, and he won just like that? And it was 2 wins in a row? Was the Qinghuan sect going to rely on the Thousand Blades faction? Lin Yi rubbed his forehead. This great elder of the ruins town was also a talent. It was a waste that he didn't become a stand-up comedian. There was obviously no one else who could do this in Black Whistle. It was more reasonable to directly announce that the Thousand Blades faction had become one of the 4 major factions. Fortunately, the fact that Chi Danyi had colluded with the Awakening Heaven faction had already offended all the sections. As for the great elder of the ruins town's actions, they unanimously praised him. In any case, if Primordial Invincible really fought, he would definitely be able to kill Chi Danyi in a second. My friend, can you take us to find our young royal family member now? The clown sea serpent was not interested in human affairs at all, so he asked Lin Yi about the blue flood dragon's whereabouts. Lin Yi couldn't be bothered with the matters of the 4 great challenges anymore. Since the dust had already settled, it was time to take some time to deal with the central problem. Since the clown sea serpent asked, Lin Yi went straight to the point and said, "The members of your royal family are now in the central laboratory in Luo Mountain. They have become the gene supply source for the central to improve the strength of their subordinates. However, it will be more troublesome for you to go there. Why don't you wait here and I'll go rescue your royal family members and hand them over to you." Where is Luo Mountain? Is it very far? The clown sea serpent asked doubtfully. In fact, compared to the endless sea, the land in the immemorial underworld only occupied a very small part. In terms of distance, it really couldn't compare to the clown sea serpent and the others. Lin Yi smiled and said, "It's not far, but if I use a flying spirit beast to travel, it will take me a day to go back and forth. You guys can't use flying spirit beasts either. If you go by land, I'm afraid the blue flood dragon won't be able to wait for you guys to rescue him." The clown sea serpent felt that it made sense, but he was a little worried about Lin Yi going alone, so he asked worriedly, "Are you going alone? Can you handle it?" If it was the Lin Yi in the endless sea, it would indeed be impossible. That was why Lin Yi had asked the clown sea serpent to gather an army of sea beasts. However, there was no need for that now. After comprehending the method of using his divine sense to activate his martial skills, Lin Yi's strength was enough to run amok in the immemorial underworld. "Don't worry, you just stay here and help me protect my friends in case those guys attack them again. I'll be responsible for bringing the members of your royal family back. Is that a deal?" Lin Yi's confident look made the clown sea serpent involuntarily believe him. Moreover, with the 400 to 500 nascent soul stage experts that had just been eliminated, the strength of the center should have been greatly affected. The army of sea beasts really didn't need to follow Lin Yi anymore. After convincing the clown sea serpent, Lin Yi called Invincible Primordial, Xanijia, and Shangguan Qingyun over and instructed them to deal with the aftermath of the immemorial convention. Then Lin Yi summoned a flying spirit beast and soared into the sky with Yu, flying towards Luo Mountain. After half a day, Luo Mountain was already in sight. Yu controlled the flying spirit beast to fly to Lin Yi's side and said, "Master, the center's base is about to arrive. They have a very magical tool that can monitor the situation outside from inside the base, especially in the sky. Should we land first and then sneak over?" Lin Yi was startled, but then he understood that Yu was talking about the monitoring device in the secular world. This kind of thing that was already common in the secular world had indeed become a mysterious and powerful tool in the immemorial underworld. Since the center could even make flying saucers and alloy armors, it was very normal for them to install some monitoring devices. There was nothing strange about it. No need will directly attack. Lin Yi smiled faintly, his expression was full of strong confidence. Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing, 2 profound ascending stage cultivators, were nothing to Lin Yi, not to mention that these 2 might not be able to return alive. In addition to the 400 to 500 nascent soul stage cultivators killed by the sea beasts, Lin Yi did not think that the center's base would have much resistance. Yu obviously thought of this as well, thinking that this was an opportunity to perform well. If he could get Lin Yi to help him level up a few more times, he might be able to get rid of Lin Yi's control soon. "Master, then let's see Yu's performance. Let Yu open the door to victory for Master first." Yu patted his chest with an indomitable attitude, then commanded the flying spirit beast to accelerate forward, pulling away from Lin Yi. Lin Yi did not care about him. Anyway, with Yu's strength in the early stage of profound ascending stage, it would not be so easy for the center to threaten him. After a while, Yu, who was flying in front, controlled the flying spirit beast to dive down, and at the same time he released all the martial techniques that he had prepared. Looking from afar, the ice-attributed martial technique was sparkling and translucent. It had a gorgeous beauty to it. However, Yu Yi's actions had already been discovered by the central base. So, when Yu Yi attacked, the central base's defense system had already been activated. After a few consecutive laser beams shattered Yu Yi's attack, they continued to chase after him. Fortunately, Yu Yi's flying spirit beast was also quite agile. After dodging it easily, it continued to rush down. Chapter 56-32. Thinking of this, Yu Yi suddenly felt that he was stupid again. Why did he rush to the front? He should have let Lin Yi be the shield. As for what he thought before, well, that wasn't important anymore. Yu Yi, who was about to rush to the ground, wanted to turn around and find Lin Yi to let Lin Yi have a taste of the center's laser weapons. However, 5 people in alloy armor suddenly flew out from the base. Laser weapons needed to be charged and couldn't be fired continuously. Therefore, in this gap, soldiers were needed to fill in the gaps in the defense. These 5 people in alloy armor were the guards arranged by the center. When Yu Yi saw this, he had an excuse to escape. He hurriedly pulled the flying spirit beast up and desperately flew towards Lin Yi. Although he hadn't officially tried it, Yu Yi had stayed in the center for a while. He knew that he was definitely not a match for this kind of alloy armor. Even if he could deal with it, he should let Lin Yi block the bullets. Master. The attack power below is too strong, let's run. Yu Yi pretended to be panicking and led the 5 people in alloy armor over. With the propulsion of the flying device, the speed of the 5 people in alloy armor wasn't slower than the flying spirit beast. Moreover, while chasing from behind, the 5 people opened the laser guns on their arms and aimed at Yu Yi and his flying spirit beast. Lin Yi didn't care about Yu Yi's little thoughts. These 5 people in alloy armor were indeed too strong for Yu Yi. It was normal for him to run if he couldn't beat them. He wasn't stupid. Without waiting for the 5 people to fire their laser guns, Lin Yi directly used his martial arts skill and attracted 5 lightning bolts. At the same time, the 5 alloy armors that were emitting black smoke and sparks suddenly lost their power and fell from the sky. After 5 loud bangs, they disappeared into the forest below. The dumbfounded Yu Yi shouted in his heart, "Fuck. How could I forget that little bastard Lin Yi is the easiest to deal with these stupid iron skins? I miscalculated. I should perform well first and then let little bastard Lin Yi increase my strength for me." Yu Yi, who instantly changed his mind again, changed his direction and rushed towards the entrance of the base. As he flew, he did not forget to shout, "Master is mighty, these small fries are really not enough. Master, let's see Yu Yi's performance next. Let Yu Yi open the door to victory for Master." Before he finished speaking, the laser weapon that had finished charging launched a second round of attacks. Yu Yi immediately burst into tears. "You guys are all shills that little bastard Lin Yi found, right? Why can't you let me follow the script properly for once?" After dodging the second wave of attacks, Lin Yi flew to Yu Yi's side. "Good job," he said faintly. 1,000 thunderbolts explosion. Countless thunderbolts raged down. Except for Yu Yi, who was next to Lin Yi, the other places were almost covered with thunderbolts. The laser weapon device that had exposed its position was completely turned into a pile of scrap metal under the dense thunderbolts. The entrance of the base also slowly opened because of the failure of the electronic device. "The door to victory is really open. Let's go," Lin Yi said in a flat tone with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. He was the first to jump off the flying spirit beast and enter the central base. Yu Yi smiled twice and thought to himself, "This is all my credit. Otherwise, how could you find their position?" Seeing that Lin Yi's figure had disappeared into the entrance, Yu Yi felt that it was impossible to trap Lin Yi. So, it was better to perform well and have a better future. So, he also hurriedly jumped off the flying spirit beast and rushed in behind Lin Yi. After entering the central base, Lin Yi's divine sense spread out and covered all the space of the base in an instant. It was much more effective than any surveillance. To be honest, Lin Yi was still very surprised by the means of the center. Not to mention anything else, just this base full of sci-fi atmosphere could be built and put into use in a short period of time. It was already very amazing, not to mention that they actually made continuous breakthroughs in research. Even the profound ascension stage could be promoted. In the future, it would definitely be a big problem for Lin Yi. After sweeping the entire base with divine sense, Lin Yi's expression changed. He found that in a control room, De Feng had killed several people in a row and was now turning off some switches. It turns out that De Feng is also here. No wonder there seems to be no defensive measures after coming in. It should be shut down by De Feng. Lin Yi smiled and muttered. His figure flashed and quickly came to the room where De Feng was. "Boss Lin Yi, long time no see." De Feng turned around and said with a little excitement. Defeng, it's been hard on you these days. Linny smiled warmly and patted Defeng's shoulder. He nodded and said, not bad, you're already foundation establishment perfection. It seems like you're doing well here. Defeng laughed a few times and said, it's all right. Currently, the medicine that the center is researching can only be upgraded to foundation establishment perfection without any side effects. However, people like me are just for show. I don't have much combat power. Boss Linny, the people around you are more powerful. Linny thought that Wu Qintian, Song Lingshan, and the others were probably not as strong as him. In order to let them have a solid foundation, Linny did not casually upgrade them. Instead, he let them train on their own. Defeng, did you see me here, so you helped me? Linny asked casually. His divine sense didn't detect any more people in the base. As expected, Shui Jianfeng and Qin Dongqing took away most of the combat power. Defeng smiled and nodded, that's right. It's because there are no more people in the base that I had this opportunity. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dared to move around. You're not in charge of this base, are you? Linny asked curiously. The location of the blue dragon was confirmed. It wasn't in any danger at the moment, so Linny was in no hurry to go. He continued to chat with Defeng. Of course not. To put it bluntly, I'm just the head of security. Defeng had nothing to hide. He pointed at the complicated control panel and said, otherwise I wouldn't be able to control these devices. The person in charge here is Glasses, one of the higher-ups in the center. He received the signal that Shui Jianfeng's flying saucer had crashed, so he went to rescue them. That's how I got the opportunity. Chapter 56-33. In the beginning, Linny used some means to control Dafeng. To be honest, at that time, Dafeng was not willing to be controlled by Linny. Later, because of the benefits, Dafeng continued to follow Linny. Now, Dafeng was already convinced by Linny and was willing to work for Linny. Only Dafeng himself knew the process of this. Linny looked at the corpses on the ground and casually shot out a few alchemic fires to completely destroy the corpses. Then he said to Dafeng, I killed these people. If you can, leave the base temporarily and find an excuse to explain later, so as not to be suspected by the center. Boss Linny, don't worry. I know what to do. Dafeng replied with a smile. He was a little touched in his heart. From these small details, it could be seen that Linny really cared about Dafeng. It was right to follow such a boss. Yui stuck his head out of the door and looked around. He immediately shrank back. Dafeng asked in a low voice, Boss Linny, is the guy you brought reliable? If it was someone else, Dafeng might not have asked. What was there to doubt about the people who followed Linny? However, Yu Yi's sneaky appearance made Dafeng feel that he was not reliable. This question also made Linny a little puzzled. Yu Yi's life and death were controlled by Linny. He should be an absolutely reliable person, but Linny felt that Yu Yi's brain circuit was a little different. It was possible that his nerves were connected wrongly. Hey kid, what are you talking about? Are you trying to sow discord between me and Master? You idiot Dafeng, don't think that I can't recognize you just because I changed my appearance. Yui stuck his head out of the door and pretended to be fierce. What the hell? Dafeng was inexplicable. Who knows you? Have I seen you before? Linny rubbed his forehead and said, Dafeng, you don't have to care about him. This fellow is still very reliable. Yui immediately had a complacent look on his face. He glanced at Dafeng provocatively, but in his heart he thought, of course I'm reliable. Once I escape from your control, I'll definitely kill you. That's right, how's the condition of that blue flood dragon? In Lin Yi's spiritual sense, the blue flood dragon's body was filled with all sorts of wires and test tubes. There were so many of them that he could not count them all at once. It was enough to drive someone with trypophobia crazy. Hence, to be safe, he had to ask Defeng. Defeng frowned slightly and said, Boss Linny, I'm not too sure about this, but I heard someone say that this blue flood dragon's strength was forcibly raised to the profound ascending stage. Because it was an experimental drug, the situation is very unstable. Now it's relying on instruments and nutrient drinks to survive. If the wires and test tubes are removed, it's very likely that it will die immediately. We can't remove it? Linny looked like he had a headache. This was quite troublesome. If he brought back a dead blue flood dragon, the sea beasts might riot immediately. Yui simply walked in and said indifferently, Master, since he said that we can't remove it, then let's directly take it back. As long as the blue flood dragon doesn't die when we return it to the sea beasts, it's none of our business. Needless to say, Yui was a shameless guy. This shameless idea was very meaningful. After Linny thought about it, he nodded and said, That's the only way. With Lin Yi's universal chi he could actually try to save the blue flood dragon. However, Lin Yi wasn't sure if he could treat the sea beasts. Moreover, the sea beasts had been modified by the center. It was hard to say if it would be effective. Therefore, before he could be sure that the blue flood dragon could be saved, Lin Yi didn't dare to act rashly. If he killed the blue flood dragon, then the ancient underworld would be finished. There's no time to lose. Yui, come with me immediately. Dafeng, quickly follow your plan and arrange things to get rid of suspicion. I guess the glasses doctor will be back soon. Lin Yi didn't want to face the glasses doctor at this time. First, it was because of the blue flood dragon. Second, it was because the other party had a flying saucer. If the glasses doctor noticed that Lin Yi was in the base, he would directly fire a few laser cannons at high altitude or remotely detonate the base. Then it would be a big problem. Dafeng originally wanted to go and help, but Yui chased him away with a look of disdain. In Yu Yi's words, you're just a foundation establishment perfection weakling. Don't be a hindrance and you'll be a great help. Lin Yi and Yui were extremely fast. In just a few breaths, they arrived at the laboratory where the blue flood dragon was imprisoned. They saw a huge cylindrical glass jar filled with a light green liquid. A blue flood dragon floated inside, and its body was full of various wires and test tubes. Lin Yi observed for a while. If they wanted to take this cylindrical glass jar away, the instruments on the side couldn't be left behind. This seemed to be a bit big. Moreover, he didn't know if the flying spirit beast could bear this weight. Yui approached the glass jar and stared at the blue flood dragon inside. Then he knocked on the glass with his finger and said, "Hey, you're not dead yet, right? We're here to save you. If you're not dead, then squeak. Otherwise, we'll just collect your corpse." The blue flood dragon in the glass jar suddenly opened its eyes and looked at Yui angrily. Obviously, it was very unhappy with Yu Yi's words. Lin Yi thought to himself, as expected of the royal family, this temper is definitely not small. After pushing Yui away, Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "I was entrusted by the clown sea serpent to rescue you. However, it's not easy to deal with you in your current state. What do you think of your own condition?" The blue flood dragon struggled and twisted its body a few times. It opened its mouth and said in the water, "I don't know either. It seems like there's a very powerful force in my body, but I feel very weak. Human, if you can save me, I, Languza, will be your brother." Yui curled his lips and said softly, "Is it that rare? Having a sea beast as a brother wasn't necessarily something to be proud of. However, it's quite impressive to speak in the water." Lin Yi turned his head and glared at Yui. Only then did Yui shut his mouth resentfully. Of course he was cursing Lin Yi in his heart. "Languza, I'm not sure if you can leave this glass jar now, so I can only move it back with the things here. Don't move around. We'll figure out how to save you when we get back." Lin Yi tried his best to speak in a soothing tone. As expected, it calmed Languza's emotions very well. Chapter 56-34. As for Yui, Languza directly ignored him. As a sea beast, he was actually very perceptive and knew who was in charge here. Lin Yi nodded, and with a flip of his hands he condensed 2 super pill fire bombs. This time, Lin Yi added his own spiritual sense into them, and the ratio was relatively high, which made it easier to control the direction of the explosion. Not waiting for Yui and Languza to react, Lin Yi had already thrown out the super pill fire bombs. The 2 bombs pulled away from each other, slanted upwards and exploded outwards. With a loud bang, a huge hole ran through the entire superstructure of the base, but the broken parts didn't fall down, it was completely torn apart by the explosion. Yui was a little dumbfounded. Lin Yi's strength really refreshed his impression of him again and again. Between killing Lin Yi immediately and improving his strength to kill Lin Yi, Yui once again firmly chose the latter. Of course, this determination would only last until the next opportunity to immediately kill Lin Yi appeared. Lin Yi turned around and made a hole in the ground with the glass jar as the center, then directly lifted this piece of ground with his true chi. After testing it, he felt that the weight was okay, so he turned to Yui and helped him put the instruments on it. Yui hurriedly moved the surrounding connected instruments to this piece of ground, and scattered them so that Lin Yi could maintain his balance. However, in his heart he was thinking that Lin Yi was a little bastard. He didn't know whether he came to save the sea beast or to destroy other people's houses. Lin Yi waited for Yui to pack up, then transformed into his soul state, but with both hands holding the entire piece of ground, he flew out of the hole. Yui couldn't fly, so he could only directly jump on it, and then call the 2 flying spirit beasts. The 2 of them landed on their own flying spiritual beasts and quickly flew towards Ruined Town. As Lin Yi was still in his soul form, he carried the entire weight of the ground on his body. As a result, the flying spiritual beast beneath him did not carry much weight and did not slow down at all. It wasn't that Lin Yi couldn't fly, but if he had to carry such a large piece of ground, it would be a bit strenuous for him to use his primordial spirit to fly. Half a day later, the two of them returned to Ruined Town. The various sects had already returned to their respective residences in an inn, and only the sea beasts led by the clown sea serpent were gathered together. Prince Languza, are you all right? When the clown sea serpent saw Languza in the glass jar, he immediately went forward and asked anxiously. Languza opened his eyes and nodded. So it's Snake Shichiro. I heard that you asked this human to save me? Thank you so much. Snake Shichiro quickly smiled and said, it's all part of my duty. Besides, we've been friends since we were young, I can't just watch you suffer. Let's skip the pleasantries. Hurry up and think of a way to get me out of this damn jar. Languza wiggled his body. It was obvious that he was annoyed by this glass jar. Snake Shichiro turned to look at Lin Yi and said, Lin brothers, can't you get rid of these things? Lin Yi smiled bitterly and said, you don't know Languza's situation, that's why you're asking. What's going on? Snake Shichiro was stunned and asked in confusion. Lin Yi pointed at Languza and said, can't you feel Languza's aura? He's already at the early stage of mysterious ascension. Snake Shichiro felt it for a moment and then said with some envy, he's really at the early stage of mysterious ascension. It's only been 2 days and he has soared from the early stage of nascent soul to the early stage of mysterious ascension. This guy got a blessing in disguise. It's hard to say whether it's a blessing or a curse. Lin Yi said lightly, in order to use Languza's genes to make the fusion potion, the people in the center first used an unstable test potion to raise his strength to the early stage of mysterious ascension, and then extracted Languza's genes to use. If it was only the early stage of nascent soul Languza, it would not be able to make a potion to raise his strength to the early stage of mysterious ascension. Yes, that's what happened. Snake Shichiro nodded quickly with an expression of understanding. Yui tilted his head and asked in confusion, you can understand? Snake Shichiro shook his head decisively and said, I don't understand. If you don't understand, why are you pretending to understand? You made me think that I'm so stupid that I'm not even comparable to a sea snake, and I almost started to doubt my life. What the hell? Lin Yi was too lazy to pay attention to the indignant Yui and continued, it doesn't matter if you don't understand. Simply put, the center created a potion that can raise one to the mysterious ascension stage, but humans will die if they use it, so they captured Languza and used his strong physique of the Sea Beast King to fuse this potion. Although it was not completely successful, they can already extract materials from Languza's body to make a more stable, more perfect and more powerful potion, helping the human practitioners in the center to break through the mysterious ascension stage. This conclusion was made by Lin Yi based on some of Dafeng's words and his own inference. Although it could not be proved, Lin Yi believed that it should be very close to the truth. Shichilang came to a sudden realization and said, I understand now that you put it this way. That's why Languza's condition is very unstable right now. Although that medicine increased his strength, it also destroyed Languza's body at the same time. The things on his body were used to preserve his life? Yes, you are very smart. If we remove those things, Languza is likely to die immediately. What do you think we should do? Lin Yi brought Languza back is to leave this problem for Snake Shichiro to solve. Snake Shichiro immediately shook his head and said, then don't remove it. If Languza dies, I will be buried with him. Snake Shichiro, are you still my brother? Languza shouted, obviously very dissatisfied with Snake Shichiro's words. Snake Shichiro turned his head and advised patiently, Languza, don't be agitated, I am also doing this for your own good. Look, when you are agitated you are bleeding. Bleeding. Damn, why are you bleeding? Lin Yi was also shocked, quickly turned his head to look. Sure enough, the number of things that were inserted into Languza's body, the number of places that were inserted into the body began to bleed. If it was only 1 or 2 places, probably Snake Shichiro would not care, but such a large area of bleeding at the same time, the whole glass tank began to change color. The situation is definitely not optimistic. Languza, has this situation happened before? Lin Yi was shocked but not panicked, still maintained enough calm and immediately grasped the key problem. No, this situation has never happened before. Languza's voice was a little panicked. After all, among the sea beasts, he is only a teenager. Chapter 56:35. What should I do? What should I do? Snake Shichiro was in a panic. He was no longer as calm as he was when he first met Lin Yi. After all, Languza had a good relationship with him, and he was also a member of the royal family. He could not be blamed for panicking out of concern. Lin Yi knew that he could not count on Snake Shichiro to make a decision now. If he allowed Languza to continue bleeding, this guy would probably die here. Although Lin Yi had saved Languza according to the agreement, and even if Languza died now, there was nothing he could do. But after all, he was in front of Lin Yi. If he did not take any measures, Lin Yi would feel guilty. Get out of the way. Lin Yi shouted and pushed Snake Shichiro and Yui aside. Then he punched the glass jar. To Lin Yi's surprise, this punch, which contained a lot of genuine qi, did not shake the glass jar at all. It was obvious that the material was definitely not ordinary glass. With no time to think, Lin Yi punched again. This time, his fist was wrapped in a layer of 5 elements murderous qi. Finally, the glass jar was successfully broken. The liquid inside rushed out in an instant, tearing the broken hole. Languza also rushed out with the water. Lin Yi did not care about his wet clothes. He directly reached out to support Languza. He turned his hand and took out some healing elixirs. He crushed them for external application and smeared them on Languza's body. It was easier to take them for internal application. He just asked Languza to open his mouth and throw them in. Because he was not sure if it was effective, Lin Yi did not dare to pull out all the things at once. He just smeared healing elixirs on the fallen parts when he rushed out. Unfortunately, the effect was minimal. Although almost all of Lin Yi's elixirs were of the best quality, after the elixirs took effect, the wounds just showed signs of healing, but they split again as if there was an invisible force stopping the elixirs. Why is this happening? Why can't your pills even stop the bleeding? Snake Shichiro had been watching with hope as Lin Yi healed Languza, but now he was once again thrown into confusion. Languza twitched violently a few times, then suddenly burst into tears. After all, he was only a teenager. When he felt that death was about to befall him, he could no longer endure the heart-wrenching fear. Snake Shichiro, I don't want to die. Save me. Languza cried loudly, but it was obvious that there was an unconcealable weakness in his voice. Snake Shichiro had a bitter look on his face. He thought to himself, you don't want to die, but I don't want to die either. He had clearly saved her, but she had died right in front of him. Being buried with her was not something that could be casually said. Lin brothers, do you have any ideas? Hurry up and save him. Snake Shichiro was really anxious. Originally, saving Languza was definitely a great credit. It was not a big deal if he could not save him, and it would not affect him, Snake Shichiro. However, Languza had clearly been saved, but he died in front of Snake Shichiro in the end. This matter was a little unclear. There was no such thing as harmony among the oceanic beasts. The strong preyed on the weak, and looting a burning house was the fundamental rule. Although they had a good relationship and although they were somewhat related, no one would believe it. Lin Yi frowned slightly. Languza's current situation was not very good. Elixirs were no longer of any use, and the only chance was Lin Yi's all-purpose vital energy. I can give it a try, but I can't guarantee the result. Lin Yi chose to help in the end. After all, Languza gave Lin Yi a good feeling, and Snake Shichiro could be considered to have helped Lin Yi a lot before. Snake Shichiro was immediately overjoyed. When Lin Yi said that he could give it a try, he was like a drowning man who had grabbed onto his last life-saving straw. He quickly nodded and said, Lin brothers, go ahead and try. No matter the result, I, Snake Shichiro, will remember the benefits you've given me, Lin brothers. When Languza heard that Lin Yi might have a way, he stopped crying and looked nervously at Lin Yi, not hiding the hope in his eyes. Lin Yi estimated that Languza would not be able to hold on for long, so he no longer hesitated and said to Snake Shichiro, then I will bring Languza to a quiet room to heal him. Snake Shichiro, you and Yui will guard me outside. Snake Shichiro wanted to say that he could heal Languza here, and no one would dare to disturb him. However, he resisted in the end. After all hope was now on Lin Yi, and Snake Shichiro did not dare to make Lin Yi unhappy. Lin brothers, you'll have to work hard. Hurry up and find a quiet room. Snake Shichiro was also tactful. He immediately summoned a huge crab and asked it to carry Languza on its back. Then it followed behind Lin Yi to find a quiet room. There were many houses in ruined town, so there was no need to look for one. There were empty rooms on the side. Lin Yi just did not want others to see him healing Languza, so there was nothing to be picky about. After Lin Yi brought Languza into the empty room, Yui and Snake Shichiro guarded on both sides like two door gods. Whether it was sea beasts or humans, they were all driven far away. They even set up a layer of divine sense defense to block possible divine sense spying. The blood flow of Languza's wound slowed down a little, but it was not because his injury was getting better. On the contrary, this was the inevitable result of Languza's body losing too much blood. When the blood completely stopped flowing, it would be the time when Languza was completely finished. Lin Yi pressed his hand on Languza's thick body with a solemn expression, continuously transferring the all-purpose vital energy to him. However, the all-purpose vital energy, which had always been successful, could not heal Languza's wound this time. What is this thing? Why is it so stubbornly obstructing the recovery of the wound? Lin Yi frowned slightly. The all-purpose vital energy was effective, but there was a strange force hovering around all of Languza's wounds. Although the all-purpose vital energy could repair the wound, it would soon be destroyed by the strange force. Because the process of repairing the damage was too fast, there seemed to be no abnormality on the surface. It was as if Lin Yi's treatment did not work. Fortunately, after the all-purpose vital energy entered Languza's body, the consumption of the bleeding was offset by more than half. Languza did not continue to weaken, and he finally recovered a little bit of spirit. Lin brothers, I, Languza, sincerely thank you for saving me. Languza raised his big head and said to Lin Yi gratefully, I heard that you humans will recognize the person you respect as your boss and follow his orders. If you can save my life this time, I, Languza, am willing to recognize you as my boss. Chapter 56-36. It did not seem to be a bad thing if he could have a sea beast royal as a younger brother. At least if he wanted the sea beasts Niden, he should not need to hunt them himself. He could just ask for some directly. Lin Yi was really a little tempted by Languza's sudden proposal, so Lin Yi could not let anything happen to Languza. After thinking carefully for a while, Lin Yi probed Languza's body with his divine sense. At the same time, he did not forget to warn Languza, don't resist my divine sense. Otherwise both of us will be in trouble. Okay, I'll listen to you. Languza agreed straightforwardly before withdrawing all of his soul into his primordial spirit. He entered a dormant state with his primordial spirit. It's really thorough. Lin Yi smiled slightly. Languza could indeed completely avoid interfering with Lin Yi's actions by doing this, but in this way, it was equivalent to entrusting his life to Lin Yi. If Lin Yi had any bad intentions, he could easily do something to Languza's body. However, Languza's trust was also a responsibility for Lin Yi, so Lin Yi once again increased the intensity of his divine sense in Languza's body to thoroughly explore Languza's physical condition. It's more serious than I expected. Lin Yi sighed softly and frowned more deeply. Just now, Lin Yi's attention was attracted by the many wounds on the surface of Languza's body, so he did not notice that in Languza's body, there were signs of collapse at the genetic level. If it were not for Lin Yi's super strong divine sense, he might not have been able to find these signs. If his guess was right, it should be the sequelae left by the potion that forcibly enhanced Languza's strength, and now it broke out. The omnipotent Qi could repair the symptoms of this collapse, but it could not stop the continued destruction of the strange force. If this strange force could not be eliminated, even with the endless Qi in the jade pendant space as a support, Languza would not be able to escape the fate of the physical collapse in the end. Lin Yi glanced at Languza, whose eyes were closed. He thought to himself that whether or not Languza would be able to live would really depend on his character. He hoped that his character was still passable as a beast. Lin Yi, who already had a plan in mind, carefully divided the divine sense that invaded Languza's body into an extremely subtle trace, and then directly transformed this trace of divine sense into the spiritual awareness pill fire, and brazenly rushed into the strange force that was wreaking havoc at the genetic level of Languza. Because the Qi had no effect on these strange forces, Lin Yi had no choice but to take a risk and use the spiritual awareness pill fire to try to attack these strange forces. Fortunately, Languza believed in Lin Yi and directly absorbed the power of his divine sense into his soul. There was no residue on his body, so Lin Yi's spiritual awareness pill fire would not accidentally hurt Languza's soul and divine sense. Lin Yi's face showed a dignified expression. Although it was only an extremely small trace of the spiritual awareness pill fire, he still needed to pay a great deal of attention to control it, lest this spiritual awareness pill fire could not achieve anything and instead become an accomplice of those strange forces. In the blink of an eye, Lin Yi smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. That trace of spirit elixir fire, under his control, easily broke into the strange energy and burned away the strange energy that was 6 to 7 times its size. Overall, this number was completely a drop in the ocean, but it represented that Lin Yi's choice was correct. Your beast seems to be good, it is possible to recover in a short time. Lin Yi relaxed and said to Languza with a rare smile. As for whether Languza could hear it or not, it did not matter. Since he'd found a way, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't drag things out. He increased the input of his consciousness, and within a controllable range, he created the most amount of consciousness elixir fire he could muster at once, charging straight at the strange energy within Languza's body. Immediately after the spiritual awareness pill fire was the omnipotent Jin Qi that Lin Yi injected. In the front, the spiritual awareness pill fire swept and killed all the enemies, attacked the city and plundered the land, and the omnipotent Jin Qi cleaned the battlefield and repaired the city wall. Under the control of Lin Yi, the two forces cooperated with each other extremely well. It was because of the omnipotent Jin Qi that Lin Yi had a lot less to worry about. Even if the spiritual awareness pill fire accidentally hurt a little meridian in Languza's body, it would be repaired immediately. After half an hour, the collapse of Languza's genes had completely disappeared. After being repaired and nourished by the omnipotent Jin Qi, Languza's genes could be said to have been completely reborn. Originally, he had a strong physique of the sea beast royal family. Now, there was a trace of mutation and he was much stronger than before. It could be said that this was a blessing in disguise. As for the injuries on the body surface, it was easier to deal with them. Without the source of the strange forces in the deep layer, the forces on the surface of the wounds could not resist Lin Yi's attack and were soon completely removed. All the wounds were also completely healed under the repair of Lin Yi's omnipotent Jin Qi. It's finally done. It's really tiring. Lin Yi withdrew his divine sense and Jin Qi and could not help but let out a long sigh. The Jin Qi was replenished by the space of the jade pendant, so it was not a big deal. However, in terms of divine sense, Lin Yi had to supply all of it himself. Moreover, he had to spend a lot of time and effort to carry out fine control. An ordinary person would not be able to persist. Ha 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 ha. That's awesome. You're really cured. After the soul of Languza was awakened by Lin Yi, he immediately felt the condition of his body and laughed excitedly. Then, Languza remembered who was the reason why he was able to survive. He immediately turned his head to Lin Yi and said, "You really saved me, so from now on you're my Languza's big brother. As long as Big Brother needs it, Languza will go through fire and water for Big Brother." Lin Yi faintly smiled and said, "If you insist, I don't mind. However, I have a lot of little brothers and you're not the biggest one. So, you have to be mentally prepared." Languza laughed and said, "Big Brother, you're so powerful that you must be the king of the sea beasts in the human race. It's normal for you to have a lot of little brothers, it would be strange if you didn't have any. Big Brother, don't worry, I Languza know my limits." "Well, I'm also very happy that you can say that. There's one more thing to remind you. This time it can be considered as a blessing in disguise. From the early nascent soul stage to the early profound ascension stage, and because of my treatment while stabilizing your strength, there are also some changes. As for whether this change is good or bad, you need to study it yourself. So, after you go back, it's best for you to go into seclusion for a period of time." Lin Yi had always taken care of his little brothers, but Languza was already at the early profound ascension stage. Lin Yi couldn't help him in terms of strength, so he could only tell Languza what he had just observed. Chapter 56-37. Languza put away his smile and nodded vigorously. "I know, boss, don't worry, I know what to do. In our Sea Dragon clan, only the most outstanding geniuses can advance to the profound ascension stage when they reach adulthood. Now I have advanced to the profound ascension stage before I reach adulthood. This is all thanks to boss. If I, Languza, still don't know how to cherish it, then I'm sorry, boss." Lin Yi was shocked. From Languza's words, Lin Yi could infer that there was a profound ascension stage existence in the Sea Dragon clan. But this was not surprising. After all, Snake Shichiro was already at the Yuanying stage, so it was not surprising that there was a profound ascension stage existence in the Sea Dragon clan. Fortunately, this time they did not become enemies with the sea beasts of the Endless Sea. Otherwise, if they provoked the Sea Dragon clan, the ancient small Jianghu would be wiped out in minutes. After all, the Sea Dragon clan was also a creature that could move on land. But why did the masters of the Sea Dragon clan never appear? Otherwise, the profound ascension stage would not be a legend of the ancient small Jianghu for thousands of years. It's good that you understand. Go out first or else Snake Shichiro will be anxious. Although Lin Yi wanted to ask about the Sea Dragon clan, this was already a secret of the Languza clan. It was not good for Lin Yi to inquire about it, so he could only put it aside for now. Languza nodded and followed Lin Yi out of the room. When Snake Shichiro saw Languza behind Lin Yi, he immediately rushed up excitedly and laughed. "Good boy, I knew you were lucky, nothing will happen to you." "That's right, who do you think I, Languza, am?" Of course, there was also Boss Lin Yi's heaven-defying methods. That was how he managed to save my life. Languza said proudly and immediately started bragging about Lin Yi. Snake Shichiro was stunned. You've acknowledged Lin Yi as your boss? He didn't force you, did he? At this point, Snake Shichiro looked at Lin Yi in an unfriendly manner. Although Lin Yi was Languza's savior, if Lin Yi used this as a threat and forcefully accepted a member of the Oceanic Beast clan as a subordinate, he would be looking down on and provoking the Oceanic Beast clan. Languza snorted and said, Snake Shichiro, what are you thinking? Of course I, Languza, am willing to do it. Other than that, do you think anyone can force me to do something I don't want to do? Snake Shichiro thought about it and agreed. He knew Languza's personality the best, so he looked at Lin Yi with an apologetic gaze. Lin Yi didn't care and waved his hand. If you have something to say, go back and talk. I still have some things to deal with. It's not very convenient for so many of your Oceanic Beast army to stay here. Languza hurriedly said, Boss, don't worry, I will make them withdraw immediately. But I still want to talk with you, boss. How about you let me stay here for a few more days? Before Lin Yi could speak, Snake Shichiro objected, No, this time we made such a big fuss because of you. If you don't go back, how can this matter be resolved? Hurry up and go back with me. Come back in 2 days. Languza thought about it and agreed. Although he wanted to spend a few more days with Lin Yi, Snake Shichiro's words also made sense. Languza could only say resentfully, Fine. Go back, boss. I will come back to find you in 2 days. You will still be here, right? Lin Yi scratched his head. This was really hard to say. After the end of the immemorial grand meeting, all the sects would leave the ruined town. The ruined town would become a wasteland again. If Languza came here to find Lin Yi, he most likely wouldn't be able to find him. Languza saw that Lin Yi didn't speak, so he used his front claw to scratch his chin a few times. He took out a round bead the size of a pigeon egg and handed it to Lin Yi. Boss, this is the communication bead used by the Oceanic Beast Kings. If you want to find me, you only need to put this bead into the water on any shore of the endless sea. I will receive the message. If I want to find you, I can also sense your position through this bead. This thing is not bad. I will accept it. Lin Yi didn't hesitate. With this communication bead, it would be convenient to find Languza in the future. He just didn't know if Languza could still sense Lin Yi's position if he put this thing into the space of the jade pendant. Snake Shichiro looked at Languza's claws and suddenly said, Languza, you are already at the early stage of mysterious ascension, right? Why didn't you transform? Or 2 claws? Languza retracted his claws and smiled, I am still a minor, so I am still a sea dragon. I don't know if when I become an adult and transform into a sea dragon, will I directly break through the mysterious ascension stage and enter the mountain opening stage? Don't bullshit. There has never been a super expert in the mountain opening stage among the royal family. You should think about when you can become a real sea dragon. Maybe you still have a chance. Snake Shichiro sneered. He didn't believe Languza at all. Lin Yi looked at Languza thoughtfully, finally understanding the strength of the royal sea beasts. Sea serpents were a race that could evolve. After reaching adulthood, there was a chance for them to evolve into sea serpents. Be it talent or strength, sea serpents were obviously far superior to sea serpents, but they still weren't true dragons. If 1 in 100 of the elites of the sea serpents could evolve into sea serpents, then only 1 in 1,000 sea serpents would have the chance to become a true sea dragon. In other words, if Languza wanted to evolve into a sea dragon which could be considered a real dragon, the probability was 1 in 100,000. As for now, after the mutation, Lin Yi couldn't tell how much potential Languza had. Maybe it only needed 1 in 100 to become a sea dragon, or maybe it was less than 1 in a million. Languza and Snake Shichiro didn't notice Lin Yi's thoughts. After a few words they said goodbye to Lin Yi. The Sea Beast royal family was still waiting for the report of this operation. Snake Shichiro didn't want to continue to delay, especially before the mission was completed. If there were any more mistakes, his little heart really couldn't bear it. Under the leadership of Languza and Snake Shichiro, the Sea Beast army quickly disappeared from the outskirts of the ruined town like a receding tide. Lin Yi asked Yu to gather the 4 big and 10 young ones. After he left, Lin Yi still needed to confirm the results of the Archean convention. After a short while, all the 4 big and 10 kids gathered together again. Exanigia was the first to come and stand beside Lin Yi. Chapter 56-38. Lin Yi asked in surprise, "Didn't you announce it before? All the details have been done. Now it's time to announce the result." Everyone said that we can only proceed with the announcement after Grand Uncle Master arrives. Exanijia's words were full of pride. It was the glory of the Green Cloud sect that Lin Yi could gain the respect of all the sections. You don't mind the trouble. Alright, hurry up and announce it. I have something to say. Lin Yi waved his hand, signaling Exanijia to announce it quickly. Exanijia agreed and turned to the audience. He held his head high and announced loudly, "Everyone, I, Exanijia, will now announce the new ranking of the 4 major sects and families." The audience below the stage cooperated and gave a round of applause. In this immemorial grand meeting, the power structure could be said to have undergone earth-shattering changes, and the biggest change was the strong ascension of the Azure Cloud sect, as well as the rise of the strongest dark horse, the Thousand Blades sect. Thinking that the Thousand Blades sect, one of the top 4 sects, only had 2 members, many people were excited. They wanted to join the Thousand Blades sect after the Archaeozoic Grand Meeting. The head of the top 4 sects and families is our Green Cloud sect. The second is the Shangguan clan, the third is the Thousand Blades sect, and the last is the 5 Elements sect. The division of guards in the Archaeozoic mountain range has been determined. From now on, the distribution of resources in the Archaeozoic underworld will be decided by the new top 4 sections. Thank you. After the simple announcement, Exanigia was ready to let Lin Yi speak. Because Lin Yi said he had something to say, Exanigia naturally wouldn't talk endlessly. However, Ma Zayden didn't know that Lin Yi had something to say. After hearing Exanijia's announcement, she proudly showed off to Tribulation Jinren beside her. Tribulation Jinren, look at our 5 Elements sect, one of the top 4 sections. Do you want to join us in the future? With our friendship, I, Ma Zayden, will definitely help your Qingquan sect. Ma Zayden was in a good mood. It was a pity that Qi Daisyi didn't come out because he colluded with the center. Otherwise, it would be even better to show off in front of Qi Daisyi. Daoist Dujia's face darkened. He snorted and said, "The 5 Elements sect fell from the 2nd place to the 4th place. What is there to be proud of? And you, this shameless fellow, actually using your identity as one of the big 4 to become Qingyun sect's little brother? Even I feel ashamed for you. TSK, you're just envious, jealous and hateful, right? No matter what, the 5 Elements sect is still one of the 4 great sects. Compared to your Qingquan sect, which was originally the leader of the 4 great sects, the new 10 small sects are much stronger," Ma Zayden said indifferently. She had always thought that relying on Lin Yi and Jadian sect was the smartest decision she had ever made, and from the current results, it was indeed very good. She's just a lackey of Lin Yi. What's there to be proud of? Sage Dujia's face was full of disdain, but he was actually a little envious of Ma Zayden. "Unfortunately, you don't even have a chance." Ma Zayden laughed and said, "Haven't you heard? The Sea Beast King that Martial Granduncle Lin Yi saved just now all recognized our Martial Granduncle as their boss. How awe-inspiring. Who else in the ancient small world can compare with him?" The members of the Royal Sea Beast clan had all become Lin Yi's underlings. Ma Zayden felt that not only was her decision not wrong, but it was also a super far-sighted golden idea. There was still a big gap between the members of the 5 Elements sect and the members of the Royal Sea Beast clan, but because of Lin Yi, everyone was on the same level. Sage Dujia also received the news. Although he wasn't sure, there might be a reason for it, so he didn't speak for a while. Seeing that Sage Dujia had nothing to say, Ma Zayden was even more proud and continued to show off. "Do you understand? Martial Granduncle Lin Yi won't accept just anyone. For example, someone like you, who has no status and no skills. Martial Granduncle is too lazy to care about you. Let's not talk about the Sea Beast King, but the alchemy ability of our 5 Elements sect is beyond your reach. Do you understand?" Sage Dujia simply turned his head and ignored Ma Zayden. If he let him show off alone, he would probably get bored after a while. Lin Yi saw it clearly from the stage and was speechless. This Ma Zayden, he didn't know how to describe him. However, seeing Ma Zayden being so obedient, Lin Yi thought of his own batch of Sea Beast cores. Most of them were Golden Core Stage Sea Beast cores. After taking out 360 Golden Core Stage Sea Beast cores to exchange for the Spirit Jade quota, there were still more than 1,000 Golden Core Stage Sea Beast cores left, which were suitable for 5 Elements sect to make Golden Core. Since 5 Elements sect was sincere, Lin Yi naturally had to make good use of their resources. When he got back, Lin Yi was prepared to teach 5 Elements sect alchemy skills. This way their success rate and quality would improve. After all, Lin Yi had Zhang Liju's alchemy notes. In this aspect there were many similarities. "Ma Zayden, quiet, I'll talk to you about alchemy later. For now, listen to something important." Lin Yi pointed at Ma Zayden faintly, and Ma Zayden immediately cupped her fists and bowed respectfully as if she was all ears. Then Ma Zayden took the opportunity when Lin Yi wasn't paying attention and looked at Sage Du Jie proudly. Her eyes were full of hints. See, Grandmaster Lin Yi still needs me for something, right? You guys can't do it, right? He wouldn't want you even if you sent yourself to him. Lin Yi coughed and ignored Ma Zayden's actions. He took out the little flag that little food spirit gave him and opened it to the crowd. In the first round of the competition, I found a mechanism in the natural formation of the spirit jade vein. This is extremely important to the ancient Jianghu, so I'm going to tell you guys about it now. Hearing Lin Yi mention the spirit jade vein, after all, this was directly related to training resources. Who knew what Lin Yi was going to say? Lin Yi took out the speech he had prepared and continued. This mechanism can greatly increase the upper limit of the number of people who can enter the vein as well as the time limit, but it's not without a price. The price is that you need to put in an inner core of a sea beast above the golden core stage in order to activate the mechanism. Senior Lin, may I know the exact number of people and time? Master Lin, how many golden core stage inner cores do you need? Grand Master. This must be a sect in the North Island Alliance. Chapter 5639. After all, although the inner elixirs of sea beasts were precious, the endless sea was so vast that it was still possible to hunt them. However, the Lingyu celestial vein was only open for 10 days a year, and only 20 people could enter at a time. The amount of spiritual jade's mind was too little to supply the entire ancient underworld. This was also the reason why there were so few masters in the ancient underworld. After all, cultivation was a competition of resources. Lin Yi raised his hand and gestured for the crowd to calm down. Everyone, please calm down and listen to me. The crowd suddenly quieted down. From this, it could be seen how high Lin Yi's prestige was now. Through this mechanism, the number of people entering the Lingyu celestial vein every year can be increased to 200, and the time limit is half a year. 360 inner elixirs of golden core stage sea beasts are required. If there are no inner elixirs of golden core stage sea beasts, 72 inner elixirs of original infant stage sea beasts can be used instead. From today onwards, the rules of entering the Lingyu celestial vein will change. The 4 big and 10 small sects will have a fixed quota, and the rest of the quota will be exchanged with the inner elixirs of sea beasts. Many people's eyes lit up. It was indeed good news to be able to exchange the inner elixirs of sea beasts for the opportunity to enter the Lingyu celestial vein, and it was not limited to the 4 big and 10 small sects. Lin Yi glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, the specific allocation of the quota and the distribution of the spiritual jades will be decided by the Jadian and the other 3 big and 4 big sects after a discussion. I won't say much about this. This was a little fake. Who didn't know that the Jadian had the final say in the 4 big sects? And the Jadian was Lin Yi's word. In other words, Lin Yi was the one making the final decision. Of course, no one dared to say this out loud. In fact, Lin Yi did not want to get involved in this. He sincerely hoped that Enchanting and the others could come up with a mature plan. After all, the ancient underworld would still be under them in the future. Lin Yi turned around and said to Enchanting. The latter nodded and ordered a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect to bring 360 gold core stage sea beasts inner boluses to Lin Yi. Lin Yi injected his innate chi into the small flag, causing the array pattern on the small flag to emit bursts of golden light. Then he threw all 360 golden core stage sea beast cores into a black hole that appeared on the side of the small flag. After absorbing the sea monster's inner core, the black hole slowly became wider. The black light also slowly turned white, finally forming a teleportation gate. Lin Yi pointed at the portal and said, "This year's sea beast cores will be provided by our Jadian sect. As the first trial, we don't need any sect to provide any cores, but the quota for each sect will be limited. By the way, you won't encounter any danger when you enter the Lingyu celestial vein through this teleportation gate, unless someone harms you maliciously. Once the situation is discovered, the person and the sect behind him will be permanently disqualified from entering the Lingyu celestial vein. If it was before the ancient grand meeting, the people below the stage would have already started whispering. But now that Lin Yi's prestige was high, the people below the stage tried their best not to say anything, for fear that they would lose the qualification to enter the Lingyu celestial vein. Lin Yi smiled faintly. He withdrew his innate chi and closed the teleportation gate. He rolled up the small flag and handed it to Enchanting. Then he said to the people below the stage, after the teleportation gate is opened, People can be teleported in at any time within half a year. As long as the limit of 200 people is not exceeded, there will be no possibility of failure. When we have the quota allocation plan, we will let Enchanting handle it directly. After thinking for a while, it seemed that there was nothing more to say. Lin Yi directly waved his hand and said, "The ancient grand meeting is over. The following trade fairs and auctions will continue according to the previous arrangement. Everyone is dismissed." Enchanting was told to disperse, but as soon as Enchanting finished speaking, a large group of people surrounded him. They all wanted to get to know him first so that they could get a head start in the fight for the free entry into Lingyu Immortal's vein. Lin Yi was speechless for a while. He thought to himself that it was fortunate that he had given the formation flag to Enchanting. Otherwise, it would be very uncomfortable for him to be surrounded. After leaving the crowd quickly, Lin Yi waved to Ma Zayden and said, "Ma Zayden, come here." Without saying a word, Ma Zayden ran over and bowed with a smile on his face. He said, "Granduncle, what can I do for you?" Lin Yi would not be polite to Ma Zayden. He directly said, "There is indeed something. How about this, after the ancient grand meeting is over, you come to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I will write down some of my experiences and techniques of alchemy for you. Go back and study them carefully. Then refine the remaining inner cores of the sea beasts in the gold core stage into golden cores. Do you understand?" "Understood. Granduncle, please rest assured." Ma Zayden was secretly happy. Lin Yi was going to put the Five Elements sect in an important position. Moreover, he was going to give them pointers on alchemy. Ma Zayden had heard from Master Chen about Lin Yi's alchemy level. It was absolutely incredible. To be able to get pointers from Lin Yi, he would really wake up from his dream with a smile. "Okay, you can go back. Discuss with Enchanting about the Spirit Jade Celestial Vein. I still have something to do. I will wait for you at the Green Cloud sect in the North Island." Lin Yi waved his hand to indicate that Ma Zayden could leave. Ma Zayden quickly cupped his fists and bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Granduncle. I will rush to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island as soon as possible." To be honest, Ma Zayden could not wait to ask Lin Yi for advice on alchemy. However, Lin Yi had something to do. Ma Zayden could not help it. He could only plan to wait at the Green Cloud sect in the North Island after saying goodbye to Enchanting. Lin Yi found Yue, Primordial Invincible, and Shangguan Feixing, the three experts in the early stage of the mysterious Ascension realm. They sat on the flying spirit beast and flew to Luo Mountain again. After rescuing the blue dragon, Lin Yi was still not assured about Defeng's safety. Therefore he wanted to confirm it again. He brought the three people with him so that he could have some help in the battle. At least they could play a role in restraining the enemy. By the time they got to Luo Mountain, the central base was already in ruins. Other than the destruction Lin Yi had caused, the Glasses Doctor had probably cleaned up the place after he came back as well. There was nothing of value left. Lin Yi's divine sense swept the entire base, searching inch by inch. He was afraid of seeing Defeng's body. Fortunately, there was no such result in the end. Instead, he found a message left by Defeng in a secret code. Chapter 5640. Knowing that Defeng was fine, Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief. As for leaving the ancient underworld, Lin Yi was also quite happy. At least the ancient underworld could have a relatively quiet period of development. At this time, the matters of the ancient underworld had basically come to an end. Lin Yi could finally go back to Heaven Stage Island with peace of mind. To be honest, he really missed Heaven Stage Island. Since there was nothing left in Luo Mountain, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't stay any longer. He directly let Primordial Invincible and Shangguan Feixing return to Ruined Town to meet up with the people from their sects, while Lin Yi took Yue back to the Blue Cloud sect in the north first. On the way, Lin Yi decided to first tell Yue about his departure, so he controlled the flying spirit beast to fly beside Yue. "Yue, I should be leaving the ancient underworld in 2 days. At that time you will stay in the Blue Cloud sect in the north and guard it for me. If there is a problem you can't solve, ask Primordial Invincible and Shangguan Feixing for help. Both of them are stronger than you and will be very good reinforcements," Lin Yi said calmly. However, Yue felt that Lin Yi was giving him a warning. "Master, where are you going? Why don't you take Yue with you? Yue will definitely take care of everything for Master." Yue's face was full of hypocrisy and he pretended to ask to take him with him. In fact, Yue's heart was already blooming with joy. Waha, this little bastard Lin Yi wants to leave the ancient underworld? Then won't I be free? I don't know where this little bastard is going. It's best if he doesn't come back in the future. After he leaves here, should I first take over the Blue Cloud sect? Forget it, after Linny leaves I will be the boss of the Blue Cloud sect. I don't need to take over so obviously. After all, Lin Yi will definitely arrange for Primordial Invincible and Shangguan Feishing to monitor me. Yu thought a little too much, but he maintained the hypocritical expression on his face very well. Lin Yi smiled faintly and did not pay attention to Yu. Anyway, Lin Yi would not reveal the matter of Heaven Stage Island to Yu for the time being. It was best for him to stay and take care of the Blue Cloud sect. Now Yu, who had the primordial spirit, was no longer a small puppet in the secular world. He could judge all favorable opportunities on his own, and he could also move and cultivate freely. With him, the Green Cloud sect in the North Island was still very safe. As for Yu's plan to completely get rid of Lin Yi after he became stronger, it was simply impossible. As Lin Yi's puppet, when Lin Yi wanted to kill him, he only needed to think about it. When Lin Yi brought Yu back to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, the Archean auction in the ruined town was not over yet, so Exanijia and the others had not returned. Fortunately, Wu Qintian and the others were practicing in the sect and had not seen Lin Yi for a while. When they heard that he was back, they immediately ended their practice and came out to meet him. The scene was very lively for a while. After introducing Yu to these people that Lin Yi brought from the secular world, this guy immediately got along well with Wu Qintian and the others. He bragged a little and the atmosphere became more and more lively. Although Yu did not participate in Lin Yi's entire trip to the Archean auction, he spent half a day in the ruined town and knew everything about Lin Yi. Although his goal was to understand Lin Yi and find a chance to get rid of his control, it was just right for him to brag to these brothers of Lin Yi. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head, not caring about them. He was not a person who liked to talk and brag, so naturally he had no interest in participating. He turned back to look at Lingshan, who was looking at him tenderly and affectionately. Lin Yi smiled faintly and used Qi to communicate, "Silly girl, do you feel like you want to eat me when you look at me like that?" Lingshan blushed, knowing that Lin Yi was talking to her alone. She looked at him with a mixture of annoyance and happiness, but nodded firmly. What he meant was, "Silly girl wants to eat you, do you dare let me eat you?" Lin Yi felt a little awkward. At his current level, he didn't have to worry about what happened after a man and a woman were in love, but he still had so many girlfriends. Mengyao and the other girls were still unconscious. If he did something with someone else, he'd feel like he'd let Mengyao and the others down. It was because of this little obsession in his heart that Lin Yi didn't have a deeper relationship with any of his women after reaching his current level. In actuality, Lin Yi wasn't someone who took the initiative, and was a bit shy as well. People like him. He suddenly remembered the first time he came down the mountain to Mengyao's house, when Yushu caught him wiping his snot. Thinking of Mengyao and Yushu, Lin Yi's heart felt heavy. His strength was enough to dominate the entire ancient Jianghu, but it wasn't much on Sky-class Island. He didn't know when he'd be able to see Zhang Liju again. Lingshan was preparing to have a good talk with Lin Yi. After all, they'd been apart a lot, and it wasn't easy for them to come to the ancient Jianghu. Lin Yi had been running around everywhere, but there were other girls around him. Ziyu and Lin Yi didn't seem to have a clear relationship, but the girl was all grown up now, and her feelings for Lin Yi weren't that pure anymore. As expected, Ziyu skipped over to Lin Yi and reached out to pinch his face. "Lin Yi bro, why were you gone for so long? We were in isolation before and you didn't even wake us up when you came back. If we didn't come out now, we wouldn't be able to see you, right? I heard you're going back to Sky-class Island. Can you take us there? You guys can't go. Just stay here and train. I'll be back." Lin Yi smiled faintly as he stroked Ziyu's hair lovingly. This girl was becoming more and more beautiful, and it was hard for Lin Yi to put his finger on her, but he'd just have to take it one step at a time. "But can't we go back to the common world?" Ziyu didn't have any interest in staying here. She liked crowds. "You guys can go back as long as you have enough spirit jade. We don't lack spirit jade here." Lin Yi really didn't lack spirit jade now, and there would only be more and more of them in the ancient Jianghu. "If you guys want to go back after I leave, just get Exionijia to activate the formation." "Alright, go back to Sky-class Island then. But be careful, come visit us often." Ziyu didn't want him to leave. Chapter 56-41. I miss Qin Shi. Ziyu's eyes reddened. "There's been no news of her and I'm pretty worried. You should try to find her as soon as possible when you get to Sky-class Island." "I will." Lin Yi sighed softly. He still had a couple of girls missing from Sky-class Island, and he didn't know where they went. It was time to go back and look for them. Chikuin and Chijio couldn't interrupt either and could only giggle. Their strength had been increasing really fast recently and they were really happy. Lingshan, on the other hand, waited patiently for Ziyu to finish. She was a little sister after all and she had to let her have her way. But, just as they were talking, a blue cloud disciple came running in. Master, the head of 5 Elements sect, Ma Zayden, and their refiner, Master Chen, are here to see you. Lin paused. Already? Why aren't Xanijia and the others back yet? Lingshan didn't have any good feelings towards this Ma Zayden or whatever 5 Elements sect. As expected, 5 Elements sect didn't have anything good. The common world was like this and the ancient Jianghu was like this as well. It wasn't easy for her to talk to Lin Yi, so where did these troublemakers come from? Lin Yi saw that Lingshan was about to go berserk as well, and smiled as he held her hand. These two are refiners from the ancient Jianghu, let's go see them together. Sure. Lingshan felt Lin Yi's warm and strong hand, and that little bit of unhappiness disappeared. A sweet smile appeared on her face as she nodded. As long as she could be with Lin Yi, she would be very happy. Right, is there any news of my sister, Song Lingrui? I miss her too. Lingshan said softly. Lin Yi fell silent after hearing Ziyu mention Lin Yi, and held her hand lightly. Don't worry, she'll be fine. I'll bring them back when I get back. Lingshan was a little disappointed, but there was nothing she could do about it. She didn't say anything else after that. Ziyu saw Lin Yi and Lingshan walk out hand in hand, and a slight disappointment flashed in her eyes. She turned around and went back to bragging with Yi and the others, so Lin Yi didn't notice that at all. As far as Ziyu was concerned, she'd occupied Lin Yi for too long already. She'd just let Lingshan have this time. In the guest hall of the Green Cloud sect, Ma Zayden and Master Chen stood respectfully while waiting for Lin Yi. They had no intention of sitting down. Clearly they were very used to the change in their identities. Seeing Lin Yi and Lingshan come out, the two immediately cupped their fists and bowed. Ma Zayden greets Master Lin. Greetings, Martial Grandaunt's wife. Lingshan felt a sweetness in her heart. She felt that it was a bit of a mouthful to call her Grandmaster's wife, but since she was Lin Yi's wife, she didn't have to fuss about it. Even her impression of this Ma Zayden and Qin Biden changed a little. This was the first time Lin Yi heard of Master Chen's name, so it was Qin Biden. What a mouthful, no wonder he always called him Master. After signaling for Lingshan to sit beside the main seat, Lin Yi waved his hand, sit down and talk. The two of them expressed their gratitude and sat down respectfully. Qin Biden thought for a moment and stood up. She cupped her fists and bowed, Uncle Master Lin, I have offended you before. Please punish me. I've already forgotten what happened in the past, what's there to punish? Lin Yi smiled faintly and waved his hand casually, sit down, we've all been serving different masters before, that's all. From now on we're one family, no need to talk like that. Thank you for your magnanimity, Master Lin. Qin Biden's face was full of gratitude. After bowing again, she sat back on the chair and said, to be honest, ever since I saw Martial Granduncle's alchemy skills for the first time, I've been yearning for Martial Granduncle. Thanks to sect leader Ma's wisdom, I have the opportunity to ask Martial Granduncle for alchemy skills. Ma Zayden was proud of himself in his heart. He deeply believed Qin Biden's words, but he put on a stern expression on his face and said, Elder Qin, this time Master Granduncle is magnanimous and won't fuss over it with you. But you should remember this lesson. If something similar happens again, don't blame me, Ma Zayden, for being impolite. Yes, Master Ma is right. Qin Biden nodded humbly, not at all like the arrogance Lin Yi had when they first met. Although Master Lin forgave you and I can't punish you anymore, I'll remember this mistake. In the future, listen to Master Lin's teachings and do things for Master Lin to make up for your mistakes. Do you understand? Ma Zayden's words were blunt, but in fact, it was just to make Lin Yi feel more comfortable. After all, Lin Yi said that he didn't care about the past, but who knew if he really didn't care about it? If there were any knots left in his heart, it would always be a hidden danger. He might as well make it clear first, not only to let Lin Yi vent his anger, but also to completely wash away Qin Biden's impression in Lin Yi's heart. Lin Yi was naturally aware of Ma Zayden's intentions, so he immediately smiled faintly. Okay, I said that the past is in the past, so you don't have to worry about it. Yes, I will obey Master Lin's decree. Ma Zayden was completely relieved this time, knowing that Lin Yi really wouldn't find trouble with Qin Biden again. However, as she spoke, she became more and more respectful. Lin Yi thought that he was about to return to Heaven Step Island, and he didn't have much time to stay in the ancient small underworld. There were still many things to deal with, so he didn't want to beat around the bush with Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan, so he directly said, "This time I called you here to exchange alchemy experiences with you. You should be mentally prepared, right?" Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan hurriedly waved their hands and said, "We dare not, Master Lin is too polite. Disciple is here to learn, how can I be qualified to exchange with Master Lin?" "You don't have to be modest. To tell you the truth, my alchemy method is completely different from the alchemy methods of this era. It is the ancient alchemy method. Although some of the techniques are interlinked, it might not be able to help you much, so it's best that you don't have too much hope." Lin Yi was confident that Zhang Liju's alchemy notes could help increase the success rate and quality of 5-element sex alchemy, but of course he couldn't be too confident. What if it was really useless? Chapter 56-42. After a little hesitation, Ma Zedong carefully asked, "Martial uncle, please allow this disciple to ask, what is the difference between your alchemy technique and ours? Don't tell me you don't use divine sense alchemy fire?" This time it was Lin Yi's turn to be surprised. How could there be people in the ancient Jianghu who knew that alchemy fire was not something that could be condensed with divine sense? When he first came to the ancient Jianghu, he didn't know that there was such a thing as divine sense alchemy fire. Chinese novels. Seeing the surprised expression on Lin Yi's face, Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan immediately became excited. Qin Baidan rushed to ask, "Martial uncle, did you really master the legendary True Qi attribute alchemy fire?" Lin Yi couldn't help but be speechless. True Qi attribute alchemy fire was already a legendary technique in the ancient Jianghu? There were many records in the secular world, right? Although it wasn't to the extent of being common, it was just a little better than common, right? Speaking of which, the 5 Elements sect of the secular world and the 5 Elements Chamber of Commerce of the Heaven Step Island did not produce any alchemy experts. There should be some connection between them and the 5 Elements sect of the ancient Jianghu. This connection might be traced back to the Heaven Step Island. Was the inheritance of the divine sense alchemy fire and the true Qi alchemy fire separated? "Why are you so excited?" Lin Yi asked in confusion. From his point of view, although the pure Qi alchemy fire could be divided into different attributes, the spirit alchemy fire was basically a general type of alchemy fire without attributes. However, there didn't seem to be any difference between the two. This could be most directly reflected in the super alchemy fire bomb. After becoming a bomb, the power of the 2 alchemy fires was actually the same. Ma Zedong took a deep breath, calmed her emotions and said, "Martial uncle, don't you know? Our ancient Jianghu's divine sense alchemy fire is actually incomplete. Although it can be used for alchemy, it is said that it can only be used to refine profound level 1 pills. It's just that there is no profound level 1 alchemist in the current ancient Jianghu, so there is no way to verify this legend." Grand Martial Uncle Sect Leader Ma is right. Because the divine sense pill fire is flawed, although the upper limit of alchemy cannot be verified, the success rate of alchemy is enough to prove this problem. In fact, in the records of alchemy the success rate of alchemy should not be so low. The main reason is the lack of a true Qi attribute alchemic fire. Qin Baidan said excitedly. Originally he was worried whether Lin Yi's superb alchemy skills would be suitable for him, but now there was no need to worry about it. If Lin Yi really mastered the method of condensing the true Qi Dan fire, then as long as he found a way to integrate the divine sense Dan fire, he could immediately double the level of alchemy. Lin Yi patted his forehead, feeling a little annoyed in his heart. All along he had used 2 kinds of pill fires to create super pill fire bombs, but he had never thought that in fact the spiritual pill fire and the true Qi pill fire could be completely fused together to refine pills. After all, the spiritual pill fire did not have an attribute, and any attribute of the true Qi pill fire could be integrated into the spiritual pill fire without any hindrance. In this way the problem of Lin Yi being unable to refine pills for a long time could be solved. After all, Lin Yi had no problem condensing any pill fire. The only obstacle was changing the temperature and intensity of the pill fire. After having the experience of controlling the direction of explosion of the super pill fire bomb, Lin Yi felt that after adding the spiritual pill fire, there was a great chance to overcome the previous difficulties. If it were not for Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan, Lin Yi would have already tried it on the spot. In this case I will first teach you some simple mnemonics to condense the true Qi Dan fire. After you have figured it out, I will give you some alchemy experience. If you can successfully integrate the 2 kinds of pill fires, it can be regarded as finding a new possibility for the development of the small Jianghu in ancient times. As he spoke, Lin Yi stood up and walked to the side of the desk. He picked up the pen and paper that he had asked someone to prepare earlier and quickly copied down some of the methods of condensing the true Qi Dan fire. These weren't the things in Zhang Liju's notes, but some scattered records that Lin Yi had collected on Sky-class Island. It was much better than the common world's but still not as good as Zhang Liju's. Lin Yi didn't know what Zhang Liju thought about teaching him the methods of refining the true Qi Dan fire, so he usually wouldn't take out Zhang Liju's notes if he could substitute them. Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan looked at each other. They knew that Lin Yi was copying down the methods of condensing the true Qi Dan fire from the legends, and all of a sudden they felt an itch in their hearts, but they didn't dare walk behind Lin Yi to look, afraid that they would make Lin Yi unhappy. They could only keep twisting their bodies as if the chair they were sitting on was full of nails. After a while, Lin Yi came back with 2 or 3 pages of paper and handed it to Ma Zedong. The paper was thin, but it made Ma Zedong feel as if it weighed 1,000 kilograms. She raised her trembling hands to receive it. "Thank you, Grand Master." Ma Zedong glanced at it and immediately thanked Lin Yi solemnly. Qin Baidan followed beside Ma Zedong and bowed solemnly, expressing her gratitude to Lin Yi. Lin Yi waved his hand nonchalantly. "The fact that you guys can understand it is the best way to thank me. Start studying it now. I'll go write down some more notes and give them to you later." Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan were overjoyed and thanked him again. After suppressing their excitement, they started studying Lin Yi's handwritten notes. They realized that Lin Yi's notes were all methods of forming true Qi Dan fire, and so they took one each and started reading. Lin Yi didn't bother with them anymore and turned around to write down some notes and tips. It was still the stuff he collected on Sky-class Island, and it was no problem to give it to Ma Zedong and the others. After he was done, Lin Yi realized that Lingshan had been sitting quietly on the chair the whole time, watching Lin Yi's every move with a gentle gaze. Lin Yi put down his pen and smiled. "What's wrong with you today? You seem a little different from before." Lingshan shook her head with a smile. "Silly girl is still a silly girl. I just want to look at you a few more times. Otherwise you'll be going back to Sky-class Island soon." Lin Yi paused, not expecting Lingshan to say something like that. But it seemed that his conversation with Qin Shi had touched on Lingshan's sensitive side, making her so gentle. Chapter 56-43. Lingshan wanted to say something but remembered that there were 2 outsiders here. She turned her head and didn't say anything. In actuality, Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan were in a state where they'd forgotten themselves. There was nothing else in their minds other than the refinement fire. Not to mention the fact that Lingshan was just talking to Lin Yi in a whisper. Even if she were to take a gong and bang it in their ears, it wouldn't attract their attention. Lin Yi turned his head to look at Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan. He found that these 2 guys were really talented in alchemy. In such a short time they had already successfully formed a type of alchemy fire. Ma Zedong's alchemy fire was fire, while Qin Baidan's alchemy fire was wood. They could already control the temperature and strength of the alchemy fire. This made Lin Yi especially envious. Success. It really is a Qi element refinement fire. With this refinement fire, the quality and success rate of my refinement will increase greatly. Ma Zedong exclaimed excitedly after controlling the fire in her hand. Qin Baidan wasn't far behind either. She followed suit and said something similar. Lin Yi smiled. "You 2 are indeed masters of alchemy. To be able to grasp the method in such a short time, it's a cause for celebration. In fact, this kind of basic method was originally a simple entry-level method. It was just like some brain teasers. Those who didn't know would never understand it, but once someone said the answer, everyone would have a feeling of sudden enlightenment and feel that it was actually so simple." Ma Zedong and Qin Baidan had this feeling. They were trapped in a room before and all they could see was the things in the room. Lin Yi was like the person who pushed open a window, letting them realize that there was such a vast world and endless scenery outside. It's all thanks to the guidance of the Grand Master, otherwise us brothers would have been frogs in the well forever. We didn't know that there was such a whole new world in refinement. Ma Zedong sincerely bowed to Lin Yi. If it could be said that Ma Zedong was forced to rely on Lin Yi because of Lin Yi's strength back in the archaic meeting, then she was completely convinced now. It wasn't just because Lin Yi had taught them the way to form the pure Qi attribute pellet fire, but also because of Lin Yi's selflessness in the art of pelletization. If it were Ma Zedong and the others, they wouldn't have so easily taught their own pelletization skills to others. What they didn't know was that Lin Yi really hadn't taught them the best of Zhang Liju's skills. Lin Yi looked at the Qi refinement fire in their hands and felt it before speaking. "This is just a normal Qi refinement fire. Have you tried merging it with the spirit refinement fire?" Chin Biden glanced at Ma Zayden and said shamefully, reporting to Grand Master, this disciple has tried but was completely unable to grasp the gist of it. It seems that there is still a long way to go before I can successfully use the fusion of two kinds of pill fires to refine pills. Ma Zayden nodded in agreement. The two obviously couldn't merge the two refinement fires in one go. Lin Yi had a lot of experience in this area, but the problem was that his experience was only suitable for super refinement fire bombs, so it wasn't convenient for him to talk about it. As for demonstrating it on the spot, it was even more impossible. They couldn't even control the temperature and strength of the refinement fire. Wouldn't they just embarrass themselves? And you guys study it well. The flag of refinement in the Archean martial world will depend on you guys from now on. Lin Yi nodded with the air of a grandmaster, and after a few words of encouragement, he gave the two of them the experience he had prepared. Grandmaster, you're too courteous. With you here, the flag of refinement will never belong to us brothers. Ma Zayden took the thin stack of papers and smiled so widely that her eyes couldn't be seen. She was still complimenting Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't explain much and waved his hand to let them go. Anyway, they would naturally know that Lin Yi had left the Archean martial world in the future. However, with Yu Yi, Primordial Invincible, and Shengguan Feixing, the three nascent soul stage masters, even if they knew that Lin Yi wasn't there, they wouldn't dare to betray the Green Cloud sect. After sending the two away, Lin Yi didn't have time to talk to Lingshan. The communication bead that Languza gave him in his pocket lit up. Obviously, Languza was looking for him. They had only been separated for a short while, and Languza had already returned to the depths of the Endless Sea? Lin Yi was confused. He could only inform Lingshan and fly to the sea near the Green Cloud sect in the north and put the communication bead into the sea. After coming into contact with the water of the Endless Sea, the communication bead immediately emitted a dazzling light. A shadow of Languza appeared in front of Lin Yi. Boss, this is the location of the Green Cloud sect in the north? That's great, it's quite close to where I am now. Wait for me, I'll be there soon. Languza's image laughed loudly as he spoke to Lin Yi with a face full of enthusiasm. That's right. Lin Yi smiled and said, why are you looking for me so soon? Have you already returned to the clan and met your people? Languza shook his head and said, not yet, but I've already contacted the clan. Snake Shichiro did a good job this time and told them about your contributions. So, the clan told me to invite you to our clan's land as a guest. Invite me to your clan? Lin Yi found it strange. Normally, didn't the sea beasts hate human practitioners? Boss, this is an invitation from our Sea Serpent King himself. You can't just give him face. Otherwise, Languza, won't be able to go back in the future. Chapter 56-44. As expected of a mutated mystic early phase sea serpent, its speed in the sea was even faster than flying spirit beasts. Whoever was targeted by it in the endless sea wouldn't be able to escape its clutches. Lin Yi didn't expect Languza to come so quickly. He wanted to ask this Blue Cloud sect disciple to call Lingshan and Wu Qintian over to talk to them, but it seemed like it was too late. He could only ask this disciple to tell them where Lin Yi went so that they wouldn't worry. After receiving Lin Yi's order, the disciple immediately turned around and went back. Languza also came to the shore at almost the same time and laughed at Lin Yi. Boss, you didn't wait too long, right? I used all my strength to come here, I'm sorry. Actually, you didn't have to use all your strength to come here. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head, but what he said was the truth. I didn't want to let you wait too long, plus I wanted you to see the place of the Sea Serpent clan as soon as possible, so I was a bit impatient. Let's go now. Languza scratched his head with his front claws, looking simple and honest. He didn't look like a mystical early phase sea beast at all. I knew you would be in a hurry, so I didn't go back to say anything. Lin Yi wasn't surprised at all. Looking at Languza's speed just now, he knew that this guy wouldn't let Lin Yi dawdle here. Languza laughed and turned to Lin Yi. Boss, get on my back. Because it's a bit far, flying spirit beasts aren't as fast as me. It's best if we can go back as soon as possible. Alright, then I'll have to trouble you. Lin Yi didn't refuse and directly jumped on Languza's back. He was in Yuan spirit anyway, so he didn't need to worry about dying in the endless sea without flying spirit beasts. At most, he could fly by himself. Besides, with Languza, he definitely wouldn't encounter any danger in the endless sea. It's my Languza's honor to be able to carry Boss on my back. Boss, sit tight. We're leaving now. Then Languza arched his body and shot out like lightning, directly diving into the endless sea, leaving a 7-meter-high waterline behind as he quickly disappeared into the distance. Lin Yi stood on Languza's broad back and didn't feel any bumps, but he still maintained a very high speed. In the blink of an eye, the blue cloud sect of the North Island became a black dot on the horizon and finally disappeared. Languza, your sea beast clan seems to be very united. When we rescued you this time, the entire endless sea was rioting. Lin Yi's consciousness noticed that some of the sea beasts avoided Languza when they saw him. They waited respectfully for him to pass before continuing their actions. Lin Yi said this casually. Languza laughed and said, "Boss, you're wrong. There's no such thing as unity in the endless sea. It's just the law of the jungle." Because the sea beast royal family is at the top of the food chain, no sea beast dares to disobey the orders of our royal family. So it's a high-handed rule. Lin Yi nodded thoughtfully. In this case, it seemed much easier to let the people in the ancient small Jianghu buy the inner pellets of the sea beasts with a part of the spirit jades or other tools. Of course, hunting sea beasts was also a way to cultivate. As long as the sea beast royal family didn't care, they could choose to do so. Boss, you can say that, but we prefer to say that the strong are respected. In the endless sea, the strong are respected and worshipped. I heard that the human clan also has such a tradition, but compared to our endless sea, perhaps there's still a gap. Languza said proudly. Lin Yi was silent. The sea beasts in the endless sea usually seemed to be loose, and the royal family didn't often manage them. However, when it was necessary, they could mobilize more than 90% of the sea beasts in the shortest time. On the contrary, the human clan seemed to have a strict hierarchy. For example, in the ancient small Jianghu, there were the 4 big ones and 10 small ones. However, once something happened, the probability of each sea beast clan fighting alone or even stabbing others in the back was 80 to 90%. Lin Yi shook his head. This idea just flashed through his mind. Although it was a little heavy, it wasn't something he should consider now. Languza, if I say that we need a batch of sea beast dawn at the gold core stage or even the nascent soul stage every year, will it cause a dispute between the human clan and the sea beasts? Although he knew that it was unlikely, Lin Yi still needed to confirm it. Sure enough, Languza shook his head and said, "Boss, if you need it, of course there's no problem, but I don't know if the quantity is large. If it's too large, it might be a little troublesome." Lin Yi calculated in his heart. The spirit jade immortal veins dawn could be hunted by each sect. After all, the rules had been set and they couldn't be too comfortable. Now, the sea beast dawn that they wanted to exchange for were mainly used to refine elixirs. Ma Zedong, the head of the 5 Elements sect, had received the True Qi Dan Fire Heart chant and related notes on alchemy from Lin Yi. It would definitely improve the level of alchemy in the 5 Elements sect by several levels, so the demand for sea beast dawn would certainly increase. Completely relying on hunting sea beasts couldn't meet this demand, so Lin Yi had to prepare for a rainy day. Every year we need about 2,000 to 3,000 inner dawn. The ratio between the nascent soul stage, the gold core stage and the foundation establishment stage should be 1 to 3 to 6. Lin Yi reckoned that if these inner dawn were used to refine elixirs, it should be enough to supply the development needs of the small ancient underworld, so he didn't have the nerve to say more. Languza turned his head and said in astonishment, 2,000 to 3,000 inner dawn, so little? Then there's no problem. I thought boss wanted more than 100,000 inner dawn. Lin Yi was speechless. Only now did he remember that his little brother was one of the members of the Endless Sea's royal family, and was definitely a local tycoon. A mere 2,000 to 3,000 inner dawn was indeed nothing in his eyes, but Lin Yi didn't intend to change his mind. In any case, it was fine as long as it was enough. The small ancient underworld might not have enough to exchange for more. Boss, why don't you ask for more? In any case, although we sea beasts also like to eat inner dawn, it takes a long time to digest one inner dawn. It's far less efficient than eating meat directly. In the entire Endless Sea, tens of thousands of sea beasts die of natural causes every year, let alone those that die unnaturally. Languza really didn't regard Lin Yi as an outsider, and told him about this matter in detail. Lin Yi faintly smiled and said, "Let's talk about this later. As long as we can reach an agreement with your sea beast clan, someone will naturally be responsible for purchasing. I'm just asking about this possibility first." Chapter 56-45. Languza said straightforwardly, "All right then. In the future when you need dawn, just send someone to find me. I will definitely get it done for you." Originally, Languza wanted to say that he would give Lin Yi a batch of dawn. However, looking at Lin Yi's expression, it seemed that they wanted to cooperate for a long time. Therefore he didn't say anything definite. After all, he was only a junior in the royal family, so his words didn't have much power. "All right, I will have to trouble you in the future," Lin Yi said politely. Although Languza had recognized Lin Yi as his boss, he was still a member of the royal family of the sea beasts. Before he had a deeper understanding of his character, Lin Yi wouldn't casually order Languza around. "Boss, you are too polite. If you didn't save me, I would only have this dawn left." Languza laughed and said frankly, "To be honest, if I had enough power, it wouldn't be a problem to give you a batch of dawn every year. Unfortunately, as a member of the royal family, I am just a marginal character who can't say anything in the clan." "Can't say anything and still make the entire endless sea riot?" Lin Yi asked curiously. "After you were kidnapped, didn't the royal family mobilize all the sea beasts to rescue you? Being able to have such a formation, you should be an important member of the clan, right?" Languza shook his head and said carelessly, "Boss, you don't understand our sea flood dragon clan. As the overlord of the endless sea, if a member of the clan was kidnapped and we didn't do anything, wouldn't our prestige be ruined? So, instead of saying that it was to save me, it was to save the face of the royal family." "You sound so pitiful. If it was really like this, you wouldn't have invited me over, right?" Lin Yi didn't think that Languza would lie, but he still analyzed it for him. Languza laughed and said, "That's true. I didn't expect the patriarch to suddenly invite you over. Maybe it's because Snake Shichiro said a lot of good things about you?" After a slight pause, Languza continued, "Boss, I am actually the third in line to the throne, but my mother is a sea snake, so in terms of bloodline I am not particularly pure, so I have never been valued by the clan. But don't worry, boss, if anyone dares to make things difficult for you, I, Languza, will not let them off easily even if I have to die." Lin Yi was slightly startled. Previously, Languza had been speaking in a relaxed and casual tone, but the last few sentences revealed a rare sense of seriousness. It seemed very serious. Obviously, Languza wasn't a fool. He thought that Lin Yi might not have a smooth journey, so he let Lin Yi be mentally prepared in advance. At the same time, he also expressed his determination to protect Lin Yi. Without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Languza laughed and resumed his previous tone. "Boss, you are a rare distinguished guest. Look at me talking about useless things. Let me introduce the scenery of the endless sea to you." Since Languza had changed the topic, Lin Yi cooperated and didn't say anything more. Instead, he talked about various things in the endless sea with Languza. After half an hour, Languza caught up with Snake Shichiro and his team of sea beasts. After greeting Snake Shichiro, Lin Yi and Snake Shichiro met up and continued their journey to the deep part of the endless sea. With the addition of Snake Shichiro, Languza's conversation became more and more lively. It also let Lin Yi know that, according to the human's words, Snake Shichiro could be considered as Languza's cousin, because Languza's mother was an elder of Snake Shichiro's tribe. No wonder Snake Shichiro and Languza got along so well, playing together since they were young. It turned out that there was such a layer of relationship. After half a day, this team arrived at a small island in the deep part of the endless sea. This was where the king's palace of the Sea Flood Dragon tribe was located. "Boss, don't be fooled by this small island. In fact, the part under the sea is very big. That's the main part of the palace. It's a pity that I can't take you to visit it this time. Unless the patriarch personally gives the permission, outsiders are forbidden to enter." Languza turned his head and said to Lin Yi with a regretful expression. Lin Yi didn't care about it. He didn't come here to visit the Sea Flood Dragon Palace, so he smiled and said, "It's okay. It's good enough to be a guest on the island. Languza, you don't need to worry about it too much." "Hey, isn't this Languza? You're finally back. Only you could be captured by the human race. What a shame. If I were you, I definitely wouldn't have the face to come back." Before Lin Yi and Languza could get on the island, a sea flood dragon appeared nearby and ridiculed Languza. Originally, Lin Yi thought that this was Languza's tribe coming to welcome Languza's return. Now it seemed like he was thinking too much. Languza snorted and said bluntly, "Lan Guli, don't waste my time here. I don't want to argue with you today. Get lost." "Hey, your temper seems to have increased. Is it because I haven't taught you a lesson for so long that you've forgotten the pain?" Lan Guli glanced at Languza disdainfully. As if he had suddenly noticed Lin Yi, he pointed his claw at Lin Yi and said, "You actually let a human sit on your back? Languza, you're really promising." In the simple hierarchy of the sea beasts, those who could carry others were existences of low status. For example, back in Ruins Town, The sea crab that carried Snake Shichiro was merely a means of transportation. Now that Languza had allowed Lin Yi to stand on his back, it was tantamount to placing himself in a lowly position. To Languza, Lin Yi was his boss, so there was no problem with him doing this. However, in Lan Guli's eyes, Languza was ruining the reputation of the sea serpent tribe. Despicable human, get off Languza's back immediately. Although this bastard is also a despicable thing, he's still not someone a human like you can compare to. Lan Guli shouted at Lin Yi unceremoniously. He didn't care if he was hurting Languza's reputation. How dare you? Who are you calling despicable? Do you believe that I won't kill you? Languza instantly exploded. He propped up half of his body and shouted at Lan Guli. Lan Guli was also a direct descendant of the Sea Serpent King and could be considered as Languza's cousin. However, his bloodline was pure and his talent far surpassed that of the previous Languza. Now that he had the strength of a nascent soul stage cultivator, although he was the fourth successor, he had never regarded Languza with any importance. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.